Chapter 224. Sun Jiming's face was ashen, and his body trembled as he picked up the letter that Deng Mingxin had tossed over. Around them, everyone had a mocking look on their faces. Lad, betrayal depends on the person. Deng Gongzi doesn't dare to offend the Wang clan, but do you think that he can't deal with you? This is the consequence of not knowing when to back down. The crowd sneered coldly. They already knew that Deng Mingxin had written a letter to his father, Deng Zhou, to remove Sun Jiming's father from his position. An assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel wasn't a high position in the royal court, but it was more than enough to wipe out a mere Sun clan. Sun Jiming's fate was sealed. Hearing the ridicule from the crowd, Sun Jiming's face turned even paler. With trembling hands, Sun Jiming opened the letter. Upon seeing the first line, Sun Jiming was taken aback. He raised his head in disbelief and glanced at Deng Mingxin. What are you looking at? You're only regretting now. It's too late. Deng Mingxin sneered. Sun Jiming didn't argue, but his expression was indescribably bizarre. Picking up the letter, Sun Jiming continued reading. Initially, Sun Jiming's face was as pale as a corpse. But slowly, his lips began to move, and as he read the contents of the letter, his face grew redder and redder. By the end of the letter, Sun Jiming's eyes were brimming with excitement. Deng Mingxin. This is what they mean by karma. Take this letter and read it yourself. Sun Jiming abruptly stood up and threw the letter in front of Deng Mingxin. It was as if 1,000 jin had been removed from his body. Lad, have you gone mad? How dare you speak to Deng Gongzi in such a manner? Beside Deng Mingxin, a 15 or 16-year-old arrogant youth could not help but rebuke angrily. Deng Gongzi, we'll teach him a lesson for you. Another young man spoke up, dissatisfied with Sun Jiming's attitude. I can't be bothered to argue with you. Take a good look at this letter. Deng Mingxin, even though you've threatened me time and time again, I won't hold it against you. You're on your own in the future. After saying those words, Sun Jiming turned around and left. His aura was completely different from before. Impudent. Those who followed Deng Mingxin flew into a rage, enraged by Sun Jiming's rude behavior. However, as the person involved and the protagonist of the whole thing, Deng Mingxin had an extremely bad feeling. He had known Sun Jiming for more than a day or two, and he had a deep understanding of the latter's character. Sun Jiming was a person who was capable of everything except acting and lying. Furthermore, Sun Jiming's attitude was completely different from before. It was simply too bizarre. What's going on? Deng Mingxin knew something was amiss. He frowned deeply. Almost subconsciously, Deng Mingxin bent down and picked up the letter that Sun Jiming had tossed to the ground with deep doubt in his eyes. Bastard, get over here right now. When he saw the first line of the letter, Deng Mingxin felt as if he had been struck by lightning from the heavens. He was completely stunned. This is impossible. Deng Mingxin's face turned pale and his eyes widened in disbelief. Flipping open the letter, Deng Mingxin hurriedly scanned through it. In the blink of an eye, Deng Mingxin's face turned from pale to deathly pale. His lips trembled and cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Impossible. This is impossible. Deng Mingxin stared in the direction that Sun Jiming had left with a nervous expression. His body trembled uncontrollably, and his arrogance from before was replaced by fear. No, I can do it. I want to see Gongzi. I want to see Gongzi. Deng Mingxin seemed to have lost his soul. He abruptly turned his head around and hastily rushed in another direction. He didn't even notice that the letter had fallen from his fingers. What's wrong with Deng Gongzi? The crowd stared at one another, unable to comprehend what was going on. They were still waiting for Deng Mingxin to give the order to stop Sun Jiming so that they could teach him a lesson. Who would have thought that Deng Mingxin would run off first, as though he had lost his soul? Look at what's written on the letter. One of the men bent down and picked up the letter that Deng Mingxin had dropped. A group of people immediately gathered around. Fired. Deng Mingxin's father has been fired from the Bureau of Personnel? How is that possible? Didn't Deng Mingxin say that he was going to fire Sun Jiming's father yesterday? The crowd stared at one another in dismay. Looking at the letter in their hands, none of them could say a word. With the mystery revealed, the crowd finally understood why Deng Mingxin had left in such a hurry, and why Sun Jiming was so confident all of a sudden. Just that, wasn't this reversal a little too drastic? A moment ago, Deng Mingxin was still intending to deal with Sun Jiming's father. But in the next moment, his father was fired, and it had only been a single day. Isn't this a little too fast? One of the men exclaimed, his voice filled with shock. An assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel wasn't a high-ranking official, and it couldn't be compared to nobles, ministers, or prestigious clans. However, it wasn't a minor official either. To fire an assistant minister wasn't something that a single person could do. At the very least, it would require the approval of several people. Under normal circumstances, even if the upper echelons wanted to fire an assistant minister, it would take at least half a month. Yet, Deng Mingxin was able to get it approved in a single day. What kind of speed was this? It was no wonder Deng Mingxin's father was so furious in the letter that the first word he said was beast. He must have realized that the problem lay with Deng Mingxin. Wang Chong. It's him. It's definitely him. Only he has the ability to do this. Someone suddenly exclaimed. As soon as those words were spoken, the surroundings immediately fell silent. To fire an assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel in a single day wasn't something an ordinary person could do. But there was one person who could do it, Wang Chong. It was rumored that during the consort Taijin incident, Wang Chong had single-handedly helped the king of Song reverse the situation and return to the royal court. As such, he was highly regarded by the king of Song. On top of that, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen was an influential official in the royal court. With the two of them working together, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to remove an assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel. On top of that, Wang Chong had the motive to help Sun Jiming deal with Deng Mingxin. There was no mistaking this point. However, not only did the crowd not feel relieved, their hearts felt heavy, as though a mountain was pressing down on them. If Wang Chong could make use of his clan's influence to deal with Deng Mingxin easily, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with them. The House of Ministers and Generals isn't something that ordinary people can afford to offend. At this moment, everyone felt a deep sense of apprehension. Deng Mingxin, don't you think that it's a little too late for you to think of me now? On Azure Dragon Peak, Zheng Xian flung his sleeves and flung Deng Mingxin's hands away with a livid face. Dressed in a black robe, Zheng Xian had a delicate face, and he looked to be in his late teens. But very few people knew that he was the student leader of King Qi's Kunwu training camp. Zheng Xian had contributed greatly to the Turks and Gogurians, and it was due to this that he managed to gather quite a bit of influence. However, not many people were aware of this point. Gongzi, you have to save me. I only did this because I didn't want to trouble Gongzi. I didn't expect this to happen. Kneeling on the floor, Deng Mingxin was on the verge of tears. Zheng Gongzi, you are King Qi's subordinate. I'll have to trouble you to plead with King Qi. Bastard! What are you saying? Who do you think King Qi is? Do you think that he will listen to your orders? Zheng Xian's face immediately darkened. Deng Mingxin's face immediately warped. He knew that he had misspoken. However, it was no longer up to him. Zheng Gongzi, no matter what, you have to think of a way to help me. I'm only doing this in order to deal with Wang Chong and vent King Qi's anger. Understanding the severity of the situation, Deng Mingxin immediately changed his words. The reason why he had dealt with Sun Jiming was purely because he didn't want to lose this subordinate who was easy to control and had great potential. However, this didn't stop him from pushing everything onto Wang Chong. There's no need to say any more. I can't help you. You should leave. Zheng Xian said mercilessly. Deng Mingxin's face warped again and again. In the end, his face turned ashen and he nearly collapsed to the ground. Zheng Xian was his final straw to deal with Wang Chong. He didn't expect Zheng Xian to reject him as well. Deng Mingxin's lips trembled as he tried to explain himself. However, before he could say anything, Zheng Xian had already turned his head away. It was clear that he wasn't willing to listen to him anymore. Zheng Xian's face was completely devoid of blood, and his eyes were filled with despair. He didn't think that Zheng Xian would reject him as well. His final hope had been dashed. Staggering, Deng Mingxin stood up from the ground as if he had lost his soul. Then, he began to walk down the mountain. Gongzi, are we really not going to help him? Seeing Deng Mingxin's dispirited back, an intelligent youth beside Zheng Xian couldn't help but ask. You're muddle-headed. If I could help him, would I not? It's not that I don't want to help him, but there's no one else who can. Zheng Xian took a deep breath, but his complexion was still awful. The assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel isn't a minor official. If we want to take him down, we'll need both the King of Song and the Wang clan's Wang Zhen to make a move. Right now, unless King Qi is willing to completely fall out with the King of Song and Wang Zhen for Deng Zhou. Otherwise, there would be no way to turn this around. The King of Song has been reinstated, and now is the time for him to be proud. Think about it, if King Qi were to risk falling out with the King of Song for the sake of a deposed Deng Zhou, what would King Qi do? Would it be worth it? If Deng Mingxin had told me about this matter earlier, there might still be hope. Now that the dust has settled, not even King Qi can do anything about it. Zheng Xian's eyes shone with deep wisdom, completely different from how he acted before Deng Mingxin. Deng Mingxin thought that Zheng Xian was unwilling to help him, but he didn't know that Zheng Xian had already weighed the pros and cons and knew that this matter couldn't be helped. But if we abandon Deng Mingxin so soon after coming to our side, if others were to learn of this, they would probably be disappointed. The seemingly intelligent young man said, revealing the true worry in his heart with a single sentence. Sigh, this is also something that vexes me. Zheng Xian's face darkened. Previously, when Zhou Zhang instructed me to deal with Wang Chong, I was still thinking of keeping the peace and avoiding him if possible. But now, it seems like I can't avoid him anymore. He's pissing on my neck. As Zheng Xian spoke, his fists were clenched tightly, and his complexion was awful. Wang Chong's slap was a slap to Deng Mingxin's face, but it was also a slap to Zheng Xian's face. Wang Chong, you chose this yourself. Don't blame me for this. Chapter 225. Thank you, Gongzi. On the main peak of the Kunwa training camp, Wang Chong was currently practicing his martial arts in a training room when a figure suddenly walked in. Putong, the figure kneeled on the floor and bowed respectfully. Sun Jiming. Wang Chong turned around and stared at the kneeling youth with a hint of shock in his eyes. But soon, Wang Chong smiled. Get up, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Gongzi, thank you. Thank you for your help. Sun Jiming knelt on the floor in gratitude. After reading Deng Mingxin's letter, he had immediately rushed to Wang Chong's side. The Deng clan was too powerful for any ordinary person to oppose. If not for Wang Chong's help, the entire Sun clan would have been implicated by him. Hee, it's just a small matter. I've promised you, so I'll definitely do it. Wang Chong said. Deng Mingxin's matter was indeed a small matter to him. Given the Wang clan's strength, dealing with an assistant minister of the Bureau of Personnel was a walk in the park. All Wang Chong had to do was write a letter. On the other hand, Sun Jiming's sincerity had left him deeply moved. Even though it's a small matter to Gongzi, it's a huge matter to Sun Jiming. I, Sun Jiming, will remember this favor. Sun Jiming straightened his back and looked at Wang Chong. Deng Mingxin was a jealous person, and the Deng clan had a strong desire for control. If not for Wang Chong, Sun Jiming would have been trapped in the cage the Deng clan had set for him. Incidents like Deng Mingxin sacrificing himself so that Sun Jiming could enter the training camp would continue. More importantly, even though Sun Jiming had done so much, Deng Mingxin and the Deng clan would still use the Sun clan to threaten him. This was the reason why Sun Jiming wasn't willing to submit to Deng Mingxin. Sun Jiming was grateful to Deng Mingxin for helping him escape from the cage he had been trapped in. Without a doubt, if it wasn't for Wang Chong, he would have taken a completely different path. Sun Jiming wasn't someone who didn't know how to repay kindness, so he was extremely grateful to Wang Chong. Hee, since you're here, that's fine too. Wang Chong didn't dwell on this matter with Sun Jiming. Reaching into his robe, Wang Chong took out a stack of papers. Previously, I promised to give you a copy of the Panther Bone Cultivation Chant. This will benefit you greatly in the future. Panther Bone. Sun Jiming's heart jolted, and he abruptly raised his head. Root bone determined one's future achievements, and Sun Jiming was well aware that his root bone wasn't too good. Therefore, even if he was proud of his talent, without a good foundation, he would only be a flower in the mirror and the moon in the water. He would not be able to achieve much in the future. Thus, what Sun Jiming wanted the most upon entering the training camp was the root bone cultivation chant. It was just that Sun Jiming didn't expect Wang Chong to give him such a precious root bone cultivation technique that only nobles and nobles would possess so easily. Thank you, Gongzi. Even someone as calm as Sun Jiming couldn't help but feel agitated. This is only the first version. When you successfully cultivate the panther bone, I'll give you an even more profound version of the tiger bone cultivation technique. Sun Jiming, you're talented, so don't waste it. Wang Chong said. Hearing Wang Chong's words, a hint of doubt flashed across Sun Jiming's eyes. Wang Chong's words seemed to have a deeper meaning behind them, leaving Sun Jiming in a daze. Wang Chong smiled and didn't say anything. Sun Jiming was talented, but this talent wasn't in martial arts, but in the way of thinking. Sun Jiming was a rare, genius general. However, his strength was his greatest shortcoming. Of all the generals who graduated from the Kunwu training camp, Sun Jiming was one of the weakest generals. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died on the battlefield. A general who liked to launch surprise attacks had to possess outstanding strength. In fact, they had to be far stronger than an infantry general who fought head-on on the battlefield. Sun Jiming's death was partly man-made, but it was also partly due to his own weakness in martial arts. Perhaps not even Sun Jiming knew that Wang Chong was slowly, step by step, changing his future. First, he gave him the panther bone cultivation technique, then the tiger bone cultivation technique, and then the other unparalleled cultivation techniques that he knew of. Wang Chong's plan was to groom Sun Jiming into a powerful general who could stand on his own. The cavalry trained by the Zhuang clan is renowned throughout the world. With the Zhuang clan's cavalry paired with Sun Jiming's talent as a commander, as well as his ability to launch surprise attacks, he will surely become an influential force in the Tang dynasty in the future. Wang Chong thought. Of the people around him, there were two people that Wang Chong was looking forward to meeting the most. One was Sun Burang. With his talent, he would definitely be able to groom an army of the strongest master archers in the Tang dynasty. And the other was Sun Jiming. Archers and cavalry would always be the two most eye-catching formations on the battlefield. Archers specialized in long-range attacks while cavalry specialized in mobility. And Sun Jiming's ability to grasp opportunities on the battlefield gave him the potential to lead the strongest cavalry. Beastly instincts, this was the conclusion that Wang Chong's previous life had given to Sun Jiming's ability to grasp opportunities. Sun Jiming didn't know this himself, and he hadn't realized it yet. But this talent was truly flowing through his body. As long as he was given a powerful cavalry, Sun Jiming would be able to create one astounding surprise attack after another without anyone's orders. As for Sun Jiming, there was no need for Wang Chong to subdue him. As long as he was strong, no matter where he was, he would be a success for the entire Tang dynasty. Wang Gongzi. Please let me go. I know my mistake. Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a pleading voice sounded from the entrance of the hall. Wang Chong and Sun Jiming turned around, only to see a familiar figure walking in from outside. With a loud pang, the figure kneeled onto the floor and prostrated himself. Ha, I was wondering who it was. So it's you, Deng Mingxin. Seeing the figure kneeling on the floor, Wang Chong sneered coldly. Why, Deng Mingxin, are you here to warn me? Sun Jiming stood up from the floor with disdain in his eyes. He didn't expect Deng Mingxin to follow him all the way here to plead for mercy from Wang Chong. When this person was in power, he dared to order him around. But once he lost the upper hand, he dared to run to Wang Chong to beg for mercy. Deng Mingxin, why are you following me? Sun Jiming's complexion wasn't too good. Sun Jiming, I was wrong in the past. You can follow whoever you want to, I won't stop you anymore. Wang Gongzi, I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive me, I beg you, please let my father go. Deng Mingxin lowered his head, his face ashen. The strong preyed on the weak. Deng Mingxin knew that he was in the wrong this time. Zheng Xian had already rejected him, and Deng Mingxin knew that the only one who could save him now was Wang Chong. Deng Mingxin, it's useless to beg me. I can tell you with certainty that I won't help you. Wang Chong said calmly. Wang Chong didn't have a good impression of Deng Mingxin. This person was too manipulative. In his previous life, Sun Jiming could have done much more, but he ended up dying in his hands. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the fate of the Tang dynasty changed because of him. Furthermore, Deng Mingxin was too pragmatic. Wang Chong was the one who harmed him, using Big Uncle and the King of Song to strip his father of his scholarly title and official position. Yet, Deng Mingxin was still able to threaten Sun Jiming one moment, and the next, he ran to Wang Chong to admit defeat and beg for mercy. If such a person was given a chance to rise again, Sun Jiming would probably fall into his hands once more and be harmed by Deng Mingxin. Thus, no matter what, Wang Chong wouldn't agree to it. Jiming, I know that I've gone overboard at times. But if I ask myself honestly, I'm just trying to find a way out. Jiming, if you were in my shoes, wouldn't it be the same? Even though I did threaten you, I was just saying it. I know that I've gone overboard, but Jiming, other than this matter, think about how I've treated you. My father even praised you and gave you a box of ginseng. Have you forgotten all about it? Deng Mingxin gritted his teeth and turned to Sun Jiming. Sun Jiming hesitated. Even though he knew that the Deng clan had done so because Deng Mingxin's father wanted to win him over. But Deng Mingxin's words were undeniably true. In that instant, Sun Jiming couldn't help but feel his heart soften. After all, Deng Mingxin's father was stripped of his scholarly rank because of him. In that instant, Sun Jiming subconsciously turned to look at Wang Chong. Deng Mingxin, are you still trying to play tricks? Let me tell you, no one can change the decree of the royal court. Even if it's you, I can't help you. Don't waste your efforts. Wang Chong said coldly. He was speaking the truth. It was easy to get rid of someone like Deng Zhou, but it was extremely difficult to restore him to his scholarly rank. Spilled waters cannot be retrieved. Once a decision was made, it was impossible to change it. This was something that not even Wang Chong's big uncle or the King of Song could do. Deng Mingxin's efforts were destined to go to waste. Wang Gongzi, I don't expect you to restore my father to his post. I only hope that young master can let me and my father go and don't try to kill us. Deng Mingxin gritted his teeth. As soon as Deng Mingxin said those words, Wang Chong's face darkened. I don't know what you're talking about. Wang Chong said coldly. On the other hand, Sun Jiming seemed to have understood something, and he stared at Wang Chong in shock. Based on Deng Mingxin's words, it seemed like Wang Chong didn't just want to strip his father of his scholarly rank. This fellow is too shrewd. This thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. Stripping Deng Mingxin's father of his scholarly rank wasn't his entire plan. He did intend to deal with Deng Zhou after the latter was stripped of his scholarly rank. Deng Mingxin and his father were Sun Jiming's Achilles heel. Stripping Deng Zhou of his scholarly rank wasn't enough to change Sun Jiming's fate. Thus, the best solution was to ensure that they would never be able to make a comeback. For the sake of the empire's future, Wang Chong didn't mind playing the role of a villain. However, he didn't expect Deng Mingxin to be so sharp. Sun Jiming's death in his previous life wasn't a fluke. Wang Chong realized that he had still underestimated Deng Mingxin. The other party was far more astute than he had thought. Wang Gongzi, regardless of whether you admit it or not, I want you to spare us father and son. In exchange for this promise, I'm willing to give you a secret. Deng Mingxin gritted his teeth. Deng Mingxin wasn't a fool. He knew that Wang Chong had nothing to do with Sun Jiming, but for him, he was willing to mobilize influential officials like the King of Song and his big uncle to deal with him. From Wang Chong's actions, Deng Mingxin felt a strong sense of threat. If Wang Chong wanted to deal with him, he wouldn't stop after stripping his father of his scholarly rank. Deng Mingxin was worried that the Wang clan wouldn't let him off. What secret? Wang Chong asked impassively. It's regarding the Yao clan and King Qi. I only heard one word. Hyderabad ores. Deng Mingxin gritted his teeth. Wang. Chapter 226. How did the Yao clan find out? Wang Chong's eyes flashed. He had always viewed the matter of the Hyderabad ore as his top priority, so he rarely revealed it to others. At the very least, no one knew where he got his Wuzi steel sword for several months. The fact that the Yao clan was able to find out about the Hyderabad ore was enough to explain a lot of problems. Where did you hear that from? Wang Chong turned to look at Deng Mingxin. I also heard about it from Zheng Xian. Once, he was chatting with someone, but he didn't say anything. He was chatting with someone once, and I happened to overhear their conversation. Deng Mingxin gritted his teeth. In the past, he would never have dared to do such a thing. But Zheng Xian had already abandoned him. Since that was the case, he couldn't be blamed for this. Zheng Xian. Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up. I didn't hear much about this matter. I only heard that King Qi and the Yao clan wanted to deal with you, and this matter should have something to do with the Hyderabad ore. Deng Mingxin knelt on the ground. I understand. Wang Chong waved his hand. I'll agree to this. Don't provoke Sun Jiming anymore, including the Sun clan. Otherwise, you'll know the consequences. Deng Mingxin quickly left, but Wang Chong fell into deep thought. Deng Mingxin was just an insignificant figure. As long as he was alive, he wouldn't be able to stir up any waves. But the information he had unintentionally provided had made Wang Chong think of many things. Deng Mingxin only knew the name, so he didn't necessarily know what the Hyderabad ore was. But Wang Chong knew that the Hyderabad ore was his lifeline, as well as the lifeline of the entire Wang clan. It was precisely because of the Hyderabad ore that the Wang clan was able to fill in the final gap. They could truly become a clan like the Yao clan, perhaps even stronger than the Yao clan. But this was far from the case for Wang Chong. War was a game of economics. Without sufficient funds, no matter how powerful an individual was, they would not be able to change the future. I've already obtained 300 June of Hyderabad ore, and the cooperation with the Zhang family is already on track. Even if the Yao family knew about the existence of the Hyderabad ores, they wouldn't be able to threaten me. But for these guys to be able to find out the name of Hyderabad ore, they're really not simple. Wang Chong thought to himself. His connections in the court had already been established. Not to mention that his uncle's attitude towards him had changed, he could request for experts from him at any time. Just with the Imperial Army commander Zhao Fengchen, Wang Chong could easily have him alter the patrol routes of the Imperial Army at night and strengthen the defense of the Wang family residence. Even if King Qi and the Yao clan wanted to, they wouldn't be able to do anything. However, one must not have the intention to harm others, but one must always be on guard against others. We have to be careful about this matter. Wang Chong thought to himself. After sending off the grateful Sun Jiming, Wang Chong calmed himself down and focused on his cultivation. Ever since his reincarnation, Wang Chong had already made all the preparations he could. The most urgent matter at hand was to raise his cultivation. Clang! With a thought, the blunt sword hanging on Wang Chong's waist flew into his hands. With lightning speed, he hacked at the 3 wooden puppets 5 steps away. Chi! A surge of origin energy pierced through the air and struck one of the wooden puppets. But soon, Wang Chong's origin energy was exhausted. He was unable to fire a second or third surge of origin energy. It's still too weak. Again. With a thought, Wang Chong struck the wooden puppet once more. Swordsmanship was an offensive technique, not a secret art of internal energy. Thus, compared to other internal energy cultivation techniques, swordsmanship focused more on technique. The activation of origin energy and the condensation of sword chi, these were all content that swordsmen needed to learn. What Wang Chong was doing now was the content taught in the Art of Life Massacre. According to the requirements of the 100 Words Manual, the first step was for Wang Chong to release his origin energy through his sword and strike 3 wooden puppets within a second. As the distance between the wooden puppets increased, the number of wooden puppets increased. Only when he could release his origin energy within a second and strike 12 wooden puppets at a distance of 10 zhang would Wang Chong be able to truly cultivate his sword chi. And these were only the prelude to the Art of Life Massacre. The number of words on the mental cultivation method was only 10. The Art of Life Massacre didn't require one to cultivate internal energy, but it was far more difficult to cultivate than any other manual. Chi. Once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. In the dull training room, Wang Chong drew his sword time and time again. The training camp had just opened, and there were many Imperial Army members on the mountain. This period of time was surprisingly peaceful. Chi. 3 days later, Wang Chong's back was drenched in sweat. With a wave of his hand, 3 streams of origin energy struck 3 wooden puppets 5 steps away simultaneously. The number of wooden puppets increased rapidly. 7 days later, there were 6 of them. Then there were 7, 8, 9, there weren't many shortcuts in the cultivation of sword chi. This was something Wang Chong knew in his previous life. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Half a month later, the number of wooden puppets in front of Wang Chong had reached 14. This had already exceeded the requirements of the training. I can start the next step of the training. Wang Chong thought to himself as he began to pull the distance between the wooden puppets. Origin energy couldn't be condensed indefinitely. The further the distance, the more energy would be expended. The second stage of the Art of Life Massacre was to increase the distance of the origin energy transmission step by step. Pang! 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 The first few times, Wang Chong failed. The primordial chi shot out from the iron sword disappeared within 5 steps. But soon, Wang Chong realized the key to this. If I want to transmit the origin energy further, I need to make the origin energy from the iron sword smaller. Wang Chong thought to himself. After understanding this step, Wang Chong immediately knew what to do. 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps. Wang Chong slowly condensed the origin energy from the iron sword, making it smaller and denser. 8 steps, 9 steps, 10 steps. The distance between the wooden puppets and Wang Chong was getting further and further. This kind of thing didn't require too much comprehension. Instead, it required constant practice and slowly grasping the key. 11 steps, 12 steps, 13 steps, 4 zhang, 5 zhang, 6 zhang. The origin energy from Wang Chong's iron sword was getting further and further away. This level of origin energy couldn't actually hurt anyone, but Wang Chong didn't care. Because this was the foundation of the Art of Life Massacre. 8 zhang, 9 zhang, 11 zhang. When the wooden puppets were getting further and further away from Wang Chong, the origin energy from Wang Chong also became thinner and smaller. But the luster was getting stronger and stronger. In a single second, Wang Chong was able to strike more than a dozen wooden puppets at a distance of 120 zhang. Finally, he could enter the third stage of the foundation training. This stage was impossible for Wang Chong alone. Therefore, Wang Chong found a few people. Are you ready? In the dark secret chamber, it was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers. They could only communicate by sound. Wang Chong nodded. In the next moment, countless square-shaped wooden blocks were thrown at Wang Chong from 3 different directions. Chi! Origin energy whistled, and streams of energy whizzed out, shooting at the small square-shaped wooden blocks in the air. Pa! 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 Except for 6 or 7 wooden blocks that were hit, the rest of the wooden blocks whizzed out and hit Wang Chong's robe. It's still a bit difficult to determine the position by listening to the wind. Wang Chong opened his eyes and thought to himself. The third basic training of the Art of Life Massacre was to determine the position by listening to the wind. This was not only to determine the position of the enemy by listening to the wind, but also to train precise swordsmanship. The higher the level of swordsmanship, the higher the requirement for control and precision. As the top and unparalleled technique in the past, the Art of Life Massacre had even stricter requirements in terms of technique. Precision, speed, and accuracy were the basics of swordsmanship. Only by mastering these could one truly learn more advanced swordsmanship. While Wang Chong was concentrating on practicing the Art of Life Massacre, a group of people were beating drums and gongs outside the Kunwa training camp on a mountain very close to the White Tiger Peak. What are these guys doing? The people on the White Tiger Peak were the first to notice the strange situation nearby. At first, they were still puzzled. But gradually, they felt that something was wrong. These guys are actually building a house there. Looking at the foundation that had appeared on the peak of the mountain in just a few days, everyone was dumbfounded. Someone is actually building a house near the Kunwa training camp. Who are they? Where did these guys come from? Where did they come from? What do you think? Do you think Kunwa training camp can be built with money? In an instant, a hint of fear appeared in everyone's eyes. Outsiders were not allowed to enter Kunwa training camp. The other party actually dared to build a house at such a close distance. This person must have a powerful background. Some people wanted to go and take a look, but after hearing this, they immediately backed out. The other party clearly knew that this was Kunwa training camp, yet they still dared to build a house here. Obviously, they had a powerful background. Most of the people in Kunwa training camp were ordinary civilians or the descendants of ordinary government officials. These people were not to be trifled with. Who the hell is this person? He even mobilized the Imperial Guards. At the same time, on the Vermilion Bird Peak and the Green Dragon Peak, many people from aristocratic families also noticed this scene. However, unlike the others, they noticed that there were some figures on the peak of the mountain. They were obviously from the Imperial Guards. The Imperial Guards were the Emperor's guards. Since the other party could mobilize the Imperial Guards, it was obvious that he had a powerful background. Many people from aristocratic families also revealed a look of fear, not daring to provoke him. Hurry up, build this mansion as soon as possible. At this moment, at the top of the mountain, Wang Chong's uncle, Li Lin, was commanding a group of masons on the peak of the mountain with a few Imperial Guards. Li Lin had accepted Wang Chong's letter and bought this mountain range according to the latter's request. The Kunwa training camp strictly forbade outsiders from approaching, but places outside the camp were not subject to this rule. Wang Chong saw this loophole and asked Li Lin to buy the mountain in advance, preparing to build his first base on the mountain. Until now, no one had reacted. Wang Chong had taken the initiative. When others reacted, it would be a different story. However, although he had exploited a loophole, it still involved the 3 major training camps. Generally, even if the imperial court did not prohibit it, it would be difficult to take it down easily. But Wang Chong was different. As the saying went, someone in the imperial court had a good idea. Wang Chong just asked the king of Song for a favor and bought the mountain at the price of 80,000 taels of gold. Chapter 227. Hurry, hurry. If we can complete it before the deadline, everyone will be rewarded with an ingot of gold. Li Lin shouted from the top of the mountain. The matter of Wang Chong purchasing a mountain near the three great training camps had already caught the attention of the royal court. By the time the royal court realized this, the construction of any buildings within dozens of li of the three great training camps would be strictly prohibited. Thus, they had to work overtime to complete it as soon as possible. Wang Chong had already mentioned all of this in his letter. As the saying went, money makes the world go round. This was the moment where Wang Chong's wealth came into full play. 80,000 gold taels was a huge burden to many clans. However, Wang Chong was different. He didn't have any special business burdens. He didn't have any cash flow, and most of what he had on hand was cash. Money was the last thing he lacked. If it were anyone else, even if they had the intention, they wouldn't be able to pull out so much money so easily. With the incentive of money, the craftsmen on the mountain were full of vigor. In just 10 days, the foundation was laid. In around 20 days, the first floor was built, and the basic outline of the residence was outlined. The reason why Wang Chong bought this mountain wasn't just to build a house on it. Instead, he intended to build an antique courtyard on the mountain that could accommodate hundreds of people. A garden, a pavilion, a long corridor, a guest room, a training ground, a tea room. Everything that one would need was available. All of these items were incomparably luxurious. Even the scions of the nobility found it hard to bear. Without the support of the clan, it was unimaginable to build such a large residence. The amount of money required wasn't something that the students of the three great training camps could afford. However, to Wang Chong, this wasn't a problem at all. Hundreds of skilled craftsmen were called into the mountain. Like ants moving houses, they busied themselves. With so many people, the entire residence was built on the mountain within a month. Looking from afar, the eaves were arched, and the eaves were high. It was a grand sight. The only thing missing was a paint job and a set of solid wood furniture. Wang Chong's uncle, Li Lin, did not stand on ceremony either. As soon as the mountaintop was preliminarily built, he sent a group of experts with bulging temples to guard it. These people were sent over by Wang Chong's big uncle, Wang General. After learning of Wang Chong's request, Wang Zhen immediately dispatched these guards from his clan. Firstly, it was to protect the courtyard, and secondly, it was to protect Wang Chong. The previous night raid was a lesson to be learned. Wang Zhen didn't want anything to happen to Wang Chong again. This was the degree of importance that Wang Chong was currently receiving in the family. However, when the Wang clan's guards entered the mountain peak, all the mysteries were revealed. Wang clan guards. These people are the guards of the Wang clan. On the White Tiger Peak, a group of people stared at the expressionless guards stationed at the peak with their eyes wide open. Living in the capital, they were able to recognize the emblems of the prestigious clans. There was almost no one in the capital who didn't know of the Wang clan's influence. And there was only one person from the Wang clan in the Kunwu training camp. In an instant, everyone turned to look at Zhao Jingdian. Don't ask me. I don't know either. Gongzi has always been an unfathomable person. Zhao Jingdian knew what everyone was thinking, and he hurriedly shook his head. After interacting with Zhao Jingdian for a period of time, they knew that he wouldn't lie. However, to Su Qi, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others, it was a completely different story. The three great training camps were designated by the sage emperor. It was not a place where anyone could build anything they wanted. This was the first time they witnessed Wang Chong's means and astounding financial strength. Ha ha ha, as expected of my brother. I'll have a share of this residence from now on. Unlike the others, Wei Hao burst into laughter upon hearing the news. He was clearly excited. Isn't that lad a little too eye-catching? On the Vermilion Bird Peak, the group of powerful ladies standing beside Marchioness Yi also noticed the building that had suddenly risen from the ground. What is that Wang Chong up to? On the Azure Dragon Peak, Abu Tong and the other Hu students had also noticed the eye-catching residence. However, unlike the others, Abu Tong had been keeping a close eye on Wang Chang's movements during this period of time. It was only at the very last moment that Abu Tong noticed that the residence next to the Kunwu training camp was actually Wang Chang's. Wang Chang's memorial had caused the Hu to lose many benefits. Abu Tong didn't think that Wang Chong would do something so meaningless, so he couldn't help but frown in bewilderment. Isn't that lad of the Wang clan reacting a little too quickly? Is he intending to build a base here and expand his territory? On another peak, Zheng Xian also noticed the changes on the mountain. Walala! A moment later, two pigeons flew out from the Azure Dragon Peak, one toward King Qi and the other toward Zhou Zhang. At this very moment, Wang Chong was oblivious to the changes in the surroundings. There was a specialized training chamber in the Kunwu training camp, and only those whose cultivation had reached Origin Energy Tier 7 were allowed to use it. At this moment, Wang Chong was in the training chamber. In the past month, Wang Chong had devoted almost all of his attention to practicing the art of life massacre. He rarely returned to his residence, and even Zhao Jingdian and the others found it hard to meet him. In terms of difficulty, Wang Chong was probably no weaker than Su Han's Han. It's about time. I should be able to master it soon. In the secret chamber, Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the floor as he thought. After a month of hard work, Wang Chong had already grasped the basics of swordsmanship very well. With a thrust of the sword, he could almost accurately stab any small wooden block he wanted to stab from among the tens of thousands of small square wooden blocks. Wang Chong had a feeling that he was about to reach minor accomplishment in the art of life massacre and form sword qi. Qi! Wang Chong raised a small wooden block, and with a thought, he drew his sword, unsheathed it, and slashed down. In an instant, a ray of origin energy as thin as a silver chopstick shot through the air. Half of the origin energy was blazing fiercely while the other half was translucent and loose. The two energies intertwined with one another and pierced toward the eyes of a wooden humanoid 10 zhang away. After more than a month of hard work, Wang Chang's swordsmanship had allowed him to easily pierce through the eyes, ears, fingertips, collarbones, and any other small part of a wooden figurine. Even if it was an ant in a dark room, Wang Chong would be able to accurately pierce through it. Wang Chong was confident that if his sword were to strike, the wooden humanoid's eyes would be pierced through, leaving behind a smooth and sharp finger-sized hole. Pang! But just when Wang Chong was filled with anticipation, something strange happened. Pang! When it was still 3 to 4 zhang away from the wooden humanoid, Wang Chang's sword qi vibrated, and two completely different energies clashed in the air. In the end, with a deafening explosion, the two energies dissipated into the air. It still doesn't work. Wang Chong sighed, and the light in his eyes faded. Thus, Yung Sun's art of life massacre was far more difficult to cultivate than he had imagined. The aptitude required for this unique skill was far higher than he had imagined. Half sword qi, half primordial qi, this situation is already very good. But it still doesn't work. Sword qi is too domineering, and it can't tolerate other types of energy. If these two different energies are entangled together, my swordsmanship will not have any power. What is going on? Is it still not enough? Wang Chong thought to himself. This was already the 11th failure, and Wang Chong felt that there might be something wrong with his cultivation. Let's put it aside for now. Wang Chong sighed and stood up. Crack, a series of violent bone cracking sounds came from Wang Chong's body. Compared to before, Wang Chong's aura had obviously grown a lot stronger. The way of the sword nurtured people, and it could change a person's temperament. After cultivating the art of life massacre for more than a month, Wang Chong's aura had grown sharper, reminiscent of a sharp sword that was about to be unsheathed. He exuded an imposing aura that inspired awe in others. On top of that, Guofeng and Chai Zi had given Wang Chong several hundred-year-old ginsengs. Even though Wang Chong didn't train his internal energy, his cultivation still grew by quite a bit. Even though he hadn't reached Origin Energy Tier 8 yet, his cultivation had grown significantly. It seems like everyone has been working hard over the past month. When he walked out of the technique practicing room, he saw that the entire main peak of Kunwu was packed with people. It was bustling with activity and seemed to be in full swing. Seemingly influenced by the night assault, Wang Chong felt that everyone was working hard on their martial arts. Furthermore, when they were sparring, it was as though they were in a real battle. Archers, infantrymen, and cavalrymen, everyone seemed to be holding their breaths, putting in a lot of effort. With effort comes reward. Compared to when the training camp first opened, Wang Chong could feel that the atmosphere in the training camp had changed. The overall prowess of the training camp was clearly a notch higher. Chio. While Zhang Xian was touring the main peak, a crisp and sharp cry suddenly sounded from the top of his head. Lifting his head, Wang Chong saw messenger pigeons flying above him, flying back and forth between the training camp and the capital. Most of the people in the Kunwu training camp were commoners or descendants of ordinary officials, so there wasn't much going on here. Even without thinking too much, Wang Chong could guess that this must have something to do with the scions of the prestigious clans in the training camp. This could be considered as the style of scions of the prestigious clans in the capital. Chio. Just as Zhang Xian was chuckling, the cry of a messenger pigeon suddenly sounded from the top of his head. Raising his head, Wang Chong saw a messenger pigeon flying over from afar. Just as he was wondering who it was, Wang Chong suddenly realized that the messenger pigeon was flying straight toward him. Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up. His gaze soon fell on the messenger pigeon. This is a letter from Big Uncle. Seeing the golden ring on the left leg of the messenger pigeon, Wang Chong's eyes flickered in astonishment. This messenger pigeon was raised by Big Uncle Wang General. However, the golden ring on the left leg of the messenger pigeon held a special meaning in the Wang clan. Unless it was an extremely important matter, it wouldn't appear. Big Uncle wants to meet me. Chapter 228. Translator, Ryuxinji Editor, H2DH2. Mr. Wang Zhen was an influential official of the royal court, and he had many affairs to attend to. Unless there was something important, he wouldn't contact Wang Chong, needless to say, take the initiative to look for him. In Wang Chong's memory, the last time Big Uncle looked for him was when he committed a calamity. Furthermore, the rules of the 3 great training camps were strict. Big Uncle should understand that unless there was something important, it would be best for him not to disturb Wang Chong. Strange? Wang Chong was perplexed. Even so, he still left the area. Leaving the main peak, along a small path, he arrived at a mountain not too far away. A carriage covered in green cloth was parked, and several guards of the Wang clan stood by the side, surveying the surroundings warily. Big Uncle. Wang Chong boarded the carriage, and within the carriage, he met his big uncle. Wang General Wang Zhen was dressed in green casual clothes, and even though he wasn't dressed in the robes of the royal court, his every movement exuded the authority of an influential official. When Wang Chong entered, his brows were slightly furrowed, seemingly conflicted over something. "You're here." Upon seeing Wang Chong enter, Wang Zhen finally raised his head, and his brows slowly relaxed. A warm smile appeared on his face. "Sit." Wang Zhen gestured to his side. This seat was very close to Wang Zhen, almost right beside him. This showed his deep trust and closeness to Wang Chong. Such treatment would have been unimaginable in the past. Big Uncle. Wang Chong didn't turn down Wang Zhen's invitation. He bowed respectfully before taking a seat beside Wang General. Wang Chong knew that Big Uncle's attitude toward him was completely different from before. This was because his performance had won his Big Uncle's trust and respect, and he had been accepted as a core member of the clan. Love the house, love the crow. Now, uncle treated his mother and little sister very kindly, not as strict as before. How is the training camp? Wang Zhen asked with a smile. Instead of getting down to business, he began to ask about Wang Chang's affairs in the training camp, behaving like a benevolent elder of the clan. Not bad, except for the first day when I almost died on the mountain. Wang Chong also laughed. He was now very casual in front of his uncle, treating him as a trustworthy elder. Disregarding those minor matters, there was actually no deep grudge between Wang Chang's family and big uncle Wang Zhen. At most, it would be a little competition between big brother, second brother, and cousin Wang, as well as a little competition for grandfather's influence. However, Wang Chong had already thought it through. He would not compete with his cousin. On the contrary, he would try his best to help his cousin achieve better development and higher achievements. The development of the Wang clan should not be limited to a small pond. Instead, he should set his sights on the bigger world. I also know about this matter. Endong and Anbei had fought a few battles recently. The Turks and Gogurians had suffered heavy casualties, and this operation had paid a heavy price. However, the mistakes of the past would serve as a lesson for the future. I'll send a few experts from my family over. With them around, you'll be safer. Wang Zhen said. As an influential official of the royal court, he rarely went anywhere, and his range of activity was limited to the capital. As such, he didn't need so many experts by his side. He could easily assign them to Wang Chong. Thank you, big uncle. Wang Chong was overjoyed. He had no intention of turning down Wang Zhen's help. He didn't have many experts by his side at the moment, and the more top-notch experts he had, the better. Wang Zhen also chuckled. He viewed Wang Chong with great importance. He was the greatest hope of the Wang clan. Even if he couldn't take over his father's position and influence in the royal court, his third brother, Wang Yan, and fourth brother, Wang Mi, would have to take over. This included the eldest son, Wang Li, Wang Fu, and Wang Bei. Everything fell onto the shoulders of his youngest nephew, Wang Chong. Wang Zhen knew that once his father passed away, only Wang Chong would be able to accept his influence and lead the Wang clan to greater heights. He was the future hope of the Wang clan. No matter how many people he sent to protect him, it wouldn't be enough. Right, has Yang Zhao contacted you recently? Wang Zhen suddenly asked. Yang Zhao? Why would big uncle ask about this? Wang Chong frowned. He had met Yang Zhao a few times, but their relationship wasn't that close. Furthermore, it wasn't inconvenient for them to meet in the training camp. He hasn't. Wang Zhen straightened his back, and a hint of doubt flashed across his eyes. But it should be about time. Keep an eye out for him. He should be coming to look for you soon. Wang Chong didn't say anything, but the doubt in his eyes deepened. Why would Yang Zhao look for him? And why was big uncle so confident? Zhangqiu Jianqiong wants to come to the capital. Seeing Wang Chang's doubtful gaze, Wang Zhen fell silent for a moment before revealing the purpose of his visit. What? Hearing big uncle Wang Chang's words, Wang Chong widened his eyes in shock. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was the Southern Protector General, the great general who supports the empire. In the military circles of the Tang dynasty, Zhangqiu Jianqiong played an important role. Given Zhangqiu Jianqiong's standing, Wang Chong knew that big uncle wasn't just saying that he wanted to take a stroll in the capital. As expected, big uncle Wang Zhen said something completely different. Zhangqiu Jianqiong has been guarding Jiannan for more than 20 years now. There is no war at Irai, and Uzan is safe as well. Zhangqiu Jianqiong hasn't contributed much to the military while guarding Jiannan. This time, he wants to change his position and enter the capital. Wang Zhen said impassively, his face devoid of any emotion. Wang Chang's expression turned grim. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was the Southern Protector General, an existence on par with Gao Xianzhi and Fomenlinta. For such a figure to suddenly want to be transferred to the capital, it wasn't because he wanted to become a minor official, but because he had a bigger goal in mind. This is like a huge shark barging into the capital. A thought flashed across Wang Chang's mind. In the royal court, all positions were already fixed. This was the result of the constant competition between the various powers. Now that Zhangqiu Jianqiong wanted to enter the capital, it would be like a ferocious dragon crossing the river. The entry of a new power would disrupt the existing structure. This would affect all parties. Even the Wang clan and Big Uncle would be affected. Because there was so much porridge in the city, if too many people were to eat it, it would surely affect others. More importantly, Zhangqiu Jianqiong didn't belong to any faction at the moment. Wang Chong suddenly understood why Big Uncle would make an exception to appear at the Kunwu training camp to look for him. Initially, this matter didn't have much to do with the Wang clan or Big Uncle. The crux of the matter was Wang Chong himself. Not too long ago, Zhangqiu Jianqiong was one of the heavyweights who supported him in the regional commander's incident. The Wang clan owed Zhangqiu Jianqiong a favor, or to be more precise, Wang Chong owed Zhangqiu Jianqiong a favor. Which position does he want? Wang Chong asked. Minister of War. Wang Zhen replied. SSS. Hearing those words, Wang Chang's eyelids twitched violently. He took in a deep breath and said, that person, sure has a big appetite. The Minister of War was in charge of the mobilization of the armies of the Tang dynasty, as well as the various border armies. He wielded great influence in the royal court, and he was a truly influential official. In terms of standing, the Minister of War was above the Protector Generals and Protector Generals. For Zhangqiu Jianqiong to become the Minister of War, he was truly ambitious. This move was simply too abrupt. Even Wang Chong was taken aback by it, needless to say, Big Uncle and the others. This was a reshuffle of the upper echelons. Big Uncle, the King of Song, King Qi, the Yao clan, the Prime Minister. Everyone was involved. Wang Chong raised his head and looked at Big Uncle Wang. It suddenly dawned on him that he wasn't the only reason why Big Uncle Wang came to look for him. The King of Song was also involved. Did Yang Zhao look for you? Wang Chong asked. Not yet. Even if he did, he wouldn't be the one to look for me. Wang Zhen replied calmly. Wang Chong understood what he meant. Big Uncle Wang Zhen was an influential official in the royal court, and he was responsible for the governance of the nation. On the other hand, Yang Zhao didn't have any official position yet. The two of them weren't on the same level. Even though Wang Chong knew that the future Yang Zhao would surely become a powerful figure in the Tang dynasty, it was clear that he hadn't reached that level yet. Even though I didn't look for him, I already have the intention. Yang Zhao is just an insignificant figure, so there's no need to pay him any heed. However, the consort Taizhen backing him isn't someone we can ignore. At the moment, it's still unclear if this is the intention of the consort Taizhen, the Holy Emperor, or perhaps Zhangqiu Jianqiong is acting on his own. But no matter what, since this matter has been brought up, no one can ignore it. There has never been a successful case of a Protector General being appointed as the Minister of War. In the previous dynasty, the Anxi Protector General requested to be appointed as the Minister of War, but he failed. It was the same for Gaozong's era and Taizong's era. A contemplative look appeared in Wang Zhen's eyes. A powerful aura began to emanate from his body, revealing his identity as an influential official of the royal court. Zhangqiu Jianqiong's request to be appointed as the Minister of War is highly likely to fail, but it's not impossible. The problem now is that if we agree to it, Zhangqiu Jianqiong's entry will stir up the other powers, and our Wang clan will become the common enemy of the other powers. By then, it won't just be King Qi, the Yao clan, the Prime Minister, the other neutral powers, dukes, marquises, generals, and protector generals. Zhangqiu Jianqiong has offended quite a few people in the military. If we don't agree to it, it's fine if Zhangqiu Jianqiong fails. But if he succeeds in becoming the Minister of War, our Wang clan's enemies will not only be the Yao clan and King Qi, but also the Minister of War. Do you understand what I mean? Big Uncle Wang Zhen said grimly. The Wang clan wasn't greedy for credit, but if the Wang clan were to agree to it and Zhangqiu Jianqiong succeeded, the Wang clan would become the common enemy of the other powers in the royal court. On the other hand, if the Wang clan didn't agree to it and Zhangqiu Jianqiong succeeded, the Wang clan would become the common enemy of the other powers in the royal court. The Wang clan had quite a few powers in the military, and this included Wang Chang's father, big brother, cousin, and little uncle. The Minister of War wielded the authority to mobilize troops. If the Wang clan offended a Minister of War, even without leaving too much of a trace, the Wang clan could just deploy its troops to the most dangerous location, and the Wang clan would be in deep trouble. Chapter 229. Even if Zhangqiu Jianqiong failed to become the Minister of War, he would still be a powerful figure in the military. The identity of the Southern Protector General still carried great weight, and it wasn't something that could be easily overlooked. Even though the Wang clan wasn't necessarily afraid of Zhangqiu Jianqiong, it would be worse if they were to make an enemy out of nowhere. Furthermore, if they were to be pulled over by King Qi and the Yao clan, they would be in deep trouble. What is the stance of King Qi and Yao Guangyi? Did Zhangqiu Jianqiong look for them? Wang Chong pondered. No. Wang Zhen shook his head as a hint of approval flashed across his eyes. The current Wang Chong was indeed impressive. He didn't need to say much to be able to detect many key points. That's right. Zhangqiu Jianqiong was different from any of them. Whether it was the Wang clan or the Yao clan, he didn't have much of a relationship with either of them, except for the matter regarding Wang Chong. In other words, he didn't have any enmity with either of them. If he could rope in the Wang clan, he could also rope in the Yao clan. In this regard, he had no scruples. The Yao family hasn't expressed their stance yet, and that's what's troublesome. This matter has only just begun, and we still can't determine whether Zhangqiu Jianqiong has made contact with the Yao and Qi clans or not. If we agree with the Yao family's hostile stance, they will most likely oppose it. If we were to oppose it, even if the Yao clan didn't agree to it before, they would probably agree to it now. Even if this matter fails in the end, the Yao clan will still be able to obtain benefits. Wang Zhen frowned. If things weren't so troublesome, he wouldn't have come to Wang Chong. On the surface, there might not be the slightest bit of turbulence in politics, but when the dust settled, there would be a huge uproar. Throughout history, countless aristocratic families and rich families had made the same mistake, resulting in the annihilation of their families or their heads rolling on the ground. If one were to look into it, they would have to look into it carefully. In the Wang clan, there weren't many people qualified to discuss such matters. Wang Chong was the only one. Big Uncle isn't sure whether Zhangqiu Jianqiong will succeed or not. Wang Chong pondered for a moment and said, "Yes." Wang Zhen nodded grimly. In front of his nephew, he had nothing to hide. He had been thinking about this for a long time. Big Uncle, rest assured. Zhangqiu Jianqiong will definitely be able to enter the Great Court. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. What? Wang Zhen was astonished. Looking at Wang Chong beside him, he saw that his expression was calm and his gaze was steady. He gave off a feeling that he had a well-thought-out plan and that the overall situation was within his grasp. It seemed that he had been thinking about this matter for a long time. Wang Zhen was here to seek Wang Chang's opinion. But she didn't expect him to give her such a firm answer. "Chonger, why are you so sure?" Wang Zhen said grimly. This question had been bothering him for a long time, but for some reason, Wang Chong seemed to be very sure of it. Not even Wang Zhen would dare to say such words. "Ha, uncle, do you believe me?" Wang Chong smiled. "You child." Wang Zhen couldn't help but smile dotingly. If he didn't believe in his own nephew, he wouldn't have come here in the first place. Zhangqiu Jianqiong will definitely become the Minister of War. Wang Chong said seriously. However, even if he does become the Minister of War, it might not necessarily be beneficial to us. Zhangqiu Jianqiong will never belong to any faction between the Wang clan and the Yao clan. However, it isn't wise to reject him directly either. Since Zhangqiu Jianqiong dares to openly vie for the position of Minister of War, he must have something up his sleeves. The situation is still unclear, and there are many people who are hesitating just like Big Uncle. However, since Zhangqiu Jianqiong will become the Minister of War sooner or later, why don't you write a letter of support for him now? This way, Zhangqiu Jianqiong will be grateful to us. Given Zhangqiu Jianqiong's personality, he will surely spread the news once he receives Big Uncle's letter. After all, he has been scheming for this matter for a long time, and he is determined to succeed. However, Big Uncle can't acknowledge it verbally, nor can he express his stance in the royal court. Firstly, we can see who Zhangqiu Jianqiong has contacted in the royal court. Secondly, when the situation becomes urgent, Zhangqiu Jianqiong will surely send someone to look for Big Uncle. When that time comes, Big Uncle can make his stance clear and express his support for him. This way, not only will Zhangqiu Jianqiong be grateful to us, but it will also prevent our Wang clan from becoming the public enemy. Wang Chong lowered his head and stroked his chin. Wang Chong rarely interfered with the political affairs of the royal court, but Zhangqiu Jianqiong was no ordinary person. However, Zhangqiu Jianqiong was no ordinary person. In the future, he would definitely play an important role in the royal court. Since the Wang clan was involved in this matter, Wang Chong had no choice but to tread carefully. I understand. Chonger, you mean to say that the reason why Zhangqiu Jianqiong is so high profile is because he has a certain degree of confidence. Other than our Wang clan, he has also contacted many others. Even the Yao clan, King Qi, and the Prime Minister are all possible. This is probably the reason why you asked me to write a letter of support for him. Wang Zhen said gravely, seemingly understanding something. Wang Chong nodded, but he had other thoughts in mind. The reason why Wang Chong was certain that Zhangqiu Jianqiong would be able to break the precedent and become the Minister of War wasn't because he knew all of this, but because this was the destiny of history. The future of history was destined to develop in such a manner. Since that's the case, I understand. Wang Zhen chuckled. All of a sudden, he felt much more at ease. After chatting with Wang Chong for a while longer about the training camp, Wang Zhen left without alerting anyone. Stepping out of the carriage, Wang Chong watched as Big Uncle Wang Zhen's carriage disappeared into the distance, and the final hint of a smile on his lips gradually disappeared, replaced by a solemn expression. To think that Zhangqiu Jianqiong would still become the Minister of War. Wang Chong gazed into the distance with a hint of worry on his face. Big Uncle Wang Zhen saw Zhangqiu Jianqiong's intention to enter the royal court, but what Wang Chong saw was the future of the empire. Everything was inevitable. Big Uncle Wang Zhen didn't know how shocked Wang Chong was when he heard that Zhangqiu Jianqiong wanted to enter the royal court. History was like a massive wheel, rolling forward unstoppably. Be it in his previous life or this life, Zhangqiu Jianqiong had successfully become the Minister of War, fulfilling his dream. But what no one knew was that with Zhangqiu Jianqiong's departure, the southern defenses of the empire had fallen into a void. Wang Chong wanted to stop him, but Wang Chong knew that Zhangqiu Jianqiong was an ambitious person. He had endured for nearly 2 decades by the borders, and now, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer. If Zhangqiu Jianqiong didn't make it public, it would still be a vague declaration. There was still hope. But this time, he had made his wish known. In other words, he had already given up everything and let go of everything. He had already steeled his heart on the matter of becoming the Minister of War, and no one would be able to pull him back. This was something that no one would be able to stop. Wang Chong would never underestimate the breadth of mind and boldness of a Protector General of the Central Plains. Given his current identity, it was impossible for him to persuade such a huge crocodile. Besides, even if you were to stop him this time, Zhangqiu Jianqiong would surely try a second time and a third time. By then, once Zhangqiu Jianqiong succeeded, he would become the Wang clan's mortal enemy. This was also the reason why Wang Chong didn't try to influence him through big uncle Wang. General, besides, an eye for an eye. Zhangqiu Jianqiong had helped him in the regional commander's incident, and Wang Chong couldn't bring himself to do something as ungrateful as burning the bridge after crossing it. Yang Zhao is probably determined to push Zhangqiu Jianqiong up this time. Wang Chong thought. There was one thing that Wang Chong didn't tell big uncle Wang Zhen. The reason why he was certain that Zhangqiu Jianqiong would become the Minister of War was because consort Tai Zhen would surely allow him to become the Minister of War. After all, she was simply too weak in the royal court. Only by placing Zhangqiu Jianqiong in the royal court would consort Tai Zhen have someone to rely on in the royal court. Only then would she be able to stabilize her position. Otherwise, she would be too isolated. For this goal, she would do her best to help Zhangqiu Jianqiong ascend to the Minister of War. On the other hand, Yang Zhao also wanted Zhangqiu Jianqiong to become the Minister of War, and in fact, he was even more eager than Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Everyone thought that Zhangqiu Jianqiong was too ambitious. But in Wang Chong's view, Yang Zhao was the true mastermind. Only he could instigate consort Tai Zhen, and only he could align his interests with Zhangqiu Jianqiong's. In the royal court of the Tang dynasty, without a doubt, Yang Zhao was just an insignificant figure. But Wang Chong knew that everyone was underestimating this future giant of the Tang dynasty. His future standing would even surpass that of Yao Guangyi. Even though he still couldn't match up to someone like Yao Chong, he wasn't too far off. Yang Zhao was much smarter than everyone thought. He knew that his qualifications were too shallow. That was why he wanted to push Zhangqiu Jianqiong up to the Minister of War. As the saying went, having connections in the royal court makes things easier. Only with Zhangqiu Jianqiong would he, Yang Zhao, be able to rise to the top and realize his ambitions. On this matter, there were two people who were even more enthusiastic than Zhangqiu Jianqiong. One was consort Tai Zhen, and the other was Yang Zhao. Both of them were going to be famous giants in the future of Great Tang. Thus, regardless of whether he had the memories of his previous life or not, Wang Chong knew that Zhangqiu Jianqiong's ascension to the throne was inevitable. In his previous life, Big Uncle had chosen the wrong side on this matter, and as a result, he became a thorn in consort Tai Zhen's side. But in this life, perhaps due to Wang Chong, Big Uncle had become much more cautious and meticulous. This was also what made Wang Chong glad. If everything goes according to plan, it should be time for that person to ascend to the throne. A figure surfaced in Wang Chong's mind, and he sighed deeply. The tides of history had finally come to this. Zhangqiu Jianqiong would eventually enter the capital, and that person would eventually take over the position of Southern Protector General. These two matters were not things that Wang Chong could prevent with his current strength. This left a deep sense of helplessness in Wang Chong's heart. The tides of history couldn't be defied. What Wang Chong could do was to perfect his plan step by step, and through his own efforts, he would slowly change the tides of history. Looks like I should hurry up. Chapter 230. After leaving the foot of the mountain, Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he wrote letters to his clan, Big Uncle, the Zhang clan, and Li Zhuxin. Li Zhuxin was escorting Zhang Munian to Jiaoji in secret, so it should be about time. Pu Lang Lang. Carrier pigeons flew above the Kunwa training camp, and it didn't take long for Wang Chong to receive a letter from his clan. The letter was from Wang Chong's mother, and she said that everything was fine at home. However, there was something unexpected. Wang Chong's little sister, Wang Xiaoyao, had actually gone off to learn martial arts. Furthermore, it was said that that person was Wang Chong's teacher. Furthermore, the guards in the clan had confirmed this as well. What's going on? Upon receiving the letter, Wang Chong was dumbfounded. Little sister. Master. He only had a single master, and that was the evil emperor. However, the matter regarding the evil emperor had always been a secret. Wang Chong had never mentioned it to his clan. In fact, his little sister and mother didn't even know of the existence of the evil emperor. What's going on? Why would little sister go to the spirit vein? Besides, doesn't she dislike cultivating? Why would she suddenly become so hardworking? Wang Chong was perplexed. He knew his little sister's personality very well. If she was willing to work hard, there wouldn't be a single scion in the capital who would be a match for her. Even Marchioness Yi wouldn't be a match for his little sister. However, all of this was just Wang Chong's fantastical imagination. His little sister's personality was one of eating and waiting for death. Of the two siblings, his little sister was the true profligate. But now, his little sister actually went off to cultivate. There aren't many people in the clan who know about teacher's matter. Furthermore, I've issued a gag order, so no one will tell her. Could it be that she accidentally overheard it? Or could it be that she noticed the guards and followed them to the spirit vein? Wang Chong also felt a headache when he thought of his little sister's capricious personality. There was a large-scale construction going on at the spiritual vein, and many craftsmen and guards had been sent there. With these guards coming and going, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't attract his little sister's attention after a long time. That's fine too. My little sister's talent isn't bad, but it's a pity that her personality is too bad. I can't control her, but Master should be able to. It's good for her. Wang Chong's thoughts turned, and he suddenly laughed again. His little sister was born with incredible strength, and even though he was already an Origin Energy Tier 7 expert, he might not be a match for her. However, her master, the evil emperor, was different. With little sister's abilities, I'm afraid she won't be able to cause any waves in front of master. Furthermore, the evil emperor is not some kind-looking good old man. He is a big shot of the evil path who has caused people to turn pale at the mere mention of his name. If my little sister tries to be mischievous in front of him, I'm afraid she's just asking for trouble. Putting aside the matter of his little sister, Wang Chong received the second letter from Uncle Li Lin. He had returned to the royal palace, and the imperial army was still heavily restricted. He couldn't possibly be away for long. As for the manor that Wang Chong wanted, he had already left it to someone else. In addition, he also mentioned the matter of Wang Chong's cousin, Wang Liang. After more than a month of preparation and spending a lot of money, they bought a few ships from the seafaring families. In addition, they worked overtime to build a new ship. A total of 4 large ships formed a fleet. Majestically, they finally set off from the southern sea. Wang Liang had made up his mind on this voyage. He had gathered a large number of sea maps, and he had even found 2 old navigators. Adding on the sailors, guards, and Hai Dongqing and Hai Zhan, who were in charge of communications, the group finally began to help Wang Chong search for the meteorite metal. The Wang clan had already dispatched quite a few experts. However, Uncle Li Lin was still worried. He had used his connections to find several retired experts of the Imperial Army to sneak into the group. Wang Liang had spent his entire life messing around, playing around with petty things and inventing little things that didn't really matter. Now that he had finally made up his mind to do something big, both Big Ant and Uncle Li Lin were extremely supportive. In the letter, he expressed his gratitude to Wang Chong. Several 100,000 taels of gold had been given to Wang Liang, his cousin, without batting an eyelid. This was already the ultimate form of kinship. Big Aunt Wang Ru Shuang and Uncle Li Lin expressed their gratitude again and again. They truly had nothing to say about this nephew of theirs, Wang Chong. As for Wang Chong's search for the meteorite metal, the two of them didn't take it seriously. They both believed that Wang Chong had made up a reason to cheer Wang Liang up. This made the two of them feel even more grateful. I didn't lie a single word about this matter. The purpose of this voyage is really to search for those meteorites. After reading the letter from Big Aunt and Uncle Li Lin, a bizarre expression appeared on Wang Chong's face. Even though he had never been out to sea in his entire life, everything he said about the extraterrestrial meteoric iron was true, not a single word of falsehood. His wish to help cousin Wang Liang was true, and so was his wish to find the meteorite metal. Several 100,000 taels of gold was no laughing matter. Even though he might not care too much about it in the future, right now, Wang Chong wasn't at the point where he would treat 300,000 taels of gold lightly. Speaking of which, if cousin has already set out to sea, Mayasame Ayaka should be back soon. Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up, and his expression suddenly relaxed. Wang Chong's eyebrows rose, and his expression suddenly relaxed. If Mayasame Ayaka were here, his situation would be much better. If Mayasame Ayaka were here, his situation would be much better. At the very least, he would have someone he could rely on. Furthermore, Mayasame Ayaka was an assassin, and her senses were sharp. This way, she would be able to detect danger in advance. Now, it's up to the Zhang clan. Wang Chong thought. His collaboration with the Zhang clan involved the large mine, the Hyderabad ores, and the production of many logistics equipment. This was the project that Wang Chong was most concerned about. In Wang Chong's plans, the collaboration with the Zhang clan was of utmost importance. Flutter, flutter. A pigeon flew down from the roof. Around dusk, Wang Chong finally received a letter from the Zhang clan. The Zhang clan placed great importance on this important collaboration partner of Wang Chong. Thus, the one who replied to Wang Chong this time was the head of the Zhang clan. Everything is going smoothly. That's for the best. After reading the letter from the head of the Zhang clan, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. The head of the Zhang clan explained the progress of the past month in detail. With the support of Wang Chong's large iron ore vein, the Zhang clan's production and smelting swiftly caught up, and they even began to expand on a large scale. On the other hand, Wang Chong's 30-meter-long caltrops and strangely shaped metal plates had been developed from the very start. In a month's time, they had already forged more than 800 caltrops and 3,000 strangely shaped metal plates. Furthermore, all of them were forged from the top-notch metal that Wang Chong had requested, and every single one of them had been reinforced with more than 10 layers of toughening inscriptions. These things could definitely be considered as top-notch war machines. Given the Wang clan's capabilities, they would only be able to produce 200 to 300 of them in a month at most. But the Zhang clan was able to casually forge so many of them. Furthermore, this wasn't even when they were at full capacity. Furthermore, they had only mobilized a portion of the Zhang clan's manpower to forge for Wang Chong. Just this capability in itself was already far beyond that of an outsider clan. Without a doubt, the Zhang clan's blacksmithing prowess was on full display here. Other than that, according to the agreement with Wang Chong, the Zhang clan had already forged 8 Wuzi steel weapons. As for the final quenching and other procedures, they were all waiting for Wang Chong to take over. In the letter, the head of the Zhang clan also asked if Wang Chong was willing to take some time off to help with the final forging. Other than that, there was also a letter from Tuoba Gueyuan. In the letter, Tuoba Gueyuan also mentioned the matter of the Wuzi steel weapons. Wang Chong had been in the Kunwa training camp for more than a month, and this meant that the Imperial Army hadn't sold a single weapon for more than a month. It should be about time. After I master the sword chi of the life-slaying sword, it won't be too late for me to deal with the matters on both sides. Holding on to the letter, Wang Chong fell into deep thought. As for Li Zhuxin's letter, Wang Chong was the last one to receive it. Li Zhuxin escorted Zhang Munian to Jiaoji. At the same time, he was tasked to protect Zhang Munian from the shadows. No matter how far Jiaoji was, it should be around a month's time. In the letter, Li Zhuxin roughly explained the situation. Zhang Munian had already found a foothold in Jiaoji, and with the help of the county magistrate dispatched by the Tang dynasty, Zhang Munian was able to obtain great convenience there. The rice in Jiaoji could be harvested thrice a year, and this made things much more convenient for Zhang Munian. Just as Wang Chong had expected, Zhang Munyan immediately displayed great enthusiasm upon arriving at Jiaoji. He even busied himself day and night in the fields, searching for suitable, improved seeds. The house that Zhang Munyan bought in Jiaoji was a place that Zhang Munyan rarely stayed in. After a day, he would spend more than half of his time outside. Sometimes, he would even sleep on the stalks of the fields. Even in his dreams, Li Zhuxin could hear him talking about improved seeds. This left Li Zhuxin worried. Zhang Munyan was already old, and he wasn't a youngster anymore. Thus, Li Zhuxin could only try to use his origin energy to massage the other party's muscles, bones, and meridians while he was asleep. In the letter, Li Zhuxin even advised Wang Chong to persuade Zhang Munyan not to work so hard. Even though Li Zhuxin didn't say it explicitly, Wang Chong could sense the deep respect Li Zhuxin had for the old man whom Wang Chong had rescued from the imperial prison. In fact, he even expressed his intention to stay in Jiaoji to protect the old man. Food is the most important thing to the people. After such a long period of time, Wang Chong believed that Li Zhuxin should have understood that Zhang Munyan's research would affect the lives of the people. Not only would it benefit the people, it would benefit the future as well. Thus, Wang Chong wasn't surprised by Li Zhuxin's intention to stay in Jiaoji at all. That's fine too. With Li Zhuxin guarding the area, there's no need to worry about the hybrid rice. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong nodded his head in agreement with Li Zhuxin's suggestion. Wang Chong's concern for Zhang Munyan and his research wasn't any less than Li Zhuxin's, perhaps even exceeding it. Most of the time, wars occurred in places where the eyes couldn't see. To Wang Chong, Zhang Munyan and his hybrid rice were such existences. In the future, the outcome of a war wouldn't be decided on the battlefield but these unseen and unnoticed corners. Zhang Munyan was Wang Chong's secret weapon, an artifact that Wang Chong had left behind for the future. In the letter, Li Zhuxin also mentioned a piece of good news. After more than a decade of tireless searching, coupled with Zhang Munyan's lifetime of farming experience, Zhang Munyan had found the first male sterile plant in the farmland of Jiaoji. Li Zhuxin was using Zhang Munyan's original words. He didn't know that these words were actually Wang Chong's masterpiece. Even though the discovery of the male sterile plant wasn't much, it was still far from reaching the hybrid rice. However, to Wang Chong, this was already a huge improvement. Since he was able to find the male sterile plant, the others shouldn't be too far away. Everything is finally on track. Chapter 231. Everything was on the right track. As for what happened next, there was no need for Wang Chong to worry too much about it. Once the snowball started rolling, it would grow thicker and thicker with each passing moment. And for Wang Chong, even though the snowball that he had stacked earlier on hadn't started growing, it was already starting to roll. After meeting with Zhao Jingdian and Wei Hao a few times, Wang Chong quickly returned to his cultivation. Days passed, and Wang Chong improved with each passing day. 8 days later, Qi. Light surged in the dark chamber. Suddenly, with a Qi sound, a brilliant radiance shot out from the tip of Wang Chong's blunt sword. This radiance was as thin as a thread, but it was incredibly bright. At first glance, it was so blinding that one couldn't even open one's eyes. Furthermore, the radiance was extremely condensed, and it didn't weaken in the slightest even after extending for more than a dozen zhang. Qi. The radiance swiftly dissipated into nothingness upon coming into contact with the wall a dozen zhang away. This is sword qi. This is great. Upon seeing this radiance, Wang Chong felt incomparably agitated. After studying and comprehending it for over 10 days, he'd finally compressed the vital energy in his body to the limit and condensed this strand of swift and fierce sword qi that was fine like a gossamer. It might have seemed as thin as a thread, but it was actually the result of compressing a large amount of origin energy in Wang Chong's body. After so many days, I've finally managed to condense sword qi. Wang Chong's heart leaped in excitement. Sword qi was also a form of origin energy, but it was compressed to its limits. Because of this, the might of a sword Dao expert was so powerful. At this moment, Wang Chong felt that all his efforts had paid off. Just as he was deep in thought, Wang Chong suddenly felt a bizarre ray of light shooting in. This ray of light didn't come from the door or anywhere else. Instead, it came from the wall in front of him. The place where Wang Chong cultivated was a dark chamber, and there wasn't a single speck of light in it. This was also to get used to the practice of hearing and intuition in Sword Dao. Therefore, when a ray of light shone into the room, it would feel very strange. Strange? I remember there was no light here before. Wang Chong walked in from the ground and walked in the direction of the light. On the wall, about a meter above the ground, there was a small hole that could be vaguely seen. That strange light shone in from this hole. At first, Wang Chong didn't notice it. He even stretched out a finger to touch the wall. But soon, Wang Chong realized it. Wasn't this hole the place where the sword energy from the hit? What's going on? Could it be that the sword chi I shot out just now even pierced through the walls here? Wang Chong was dumbstruck, his entire body frozen. The surrounding walls of the training room he was in were not made of wood, but of steel. It was very difficult to build a room made of steel like this, so the Kunwa training camp only had it on the main peak. Moreover, the training room Wang Chong chose was a very private one, designed for martial artists of rank 7 and above. Wang Chong had checked before. The metal wall here was at least a foot thick. Steel as thick as this could not be easily scratched even by a broadsword. Even if it was a Wuzi steel weapon, it would be very difficult to damage such a thick weapon. But on this wall, there was actually a hair-thin hole. Was the sword energy of the so sharp? Wang Chong suddenly raised the blunt iron sword in his hand, his eyes twitching wildly. Although he was the one who shot it, even Wang Chong couldn't believe it. Swoosh! Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, Wang Chong suddenly raised his head. Without thinking, he swung his sword at the wall in front of him again. Swoosh! A burning, dazzling, and hair-thin ray of light shot out again, disappearing into the thick steel wall. Wang Chong waited for a while, but the room was dark. Apart from the ray of light, there was nothing else. Could it be that I guessed wrong? This hole is not my sword energy. Taken aback, Wang Chong suddenly felt a little uncertain. Could it be that this was all a coincidence? While he was deep in thought, suddenly, a strand of light, as thin as a strand of hair, penetrated the wall and shone into the room. Two tiny rays of light, one on the left and one on the right, were extremely eye-catching. That's right. It was really the result of the sword energy of massacre. As this thought flashed through his mind, Wang Chong stared in a daze at the two tiny rays of light shining through the wall, not even daring to believe that they were his handiwork. I didn't expect Senior Su's sword energy of massacre to be so sharp. I've only cultivated the first strand of the most basic sword energy, but I can already penetrate a steel wall that's a foot thick. If I cultivate it to the extreme, I don't know how terrifying it will be. No wonder Senior Su could single-handedly kill tens of thousands of foreign steel cavalry in the capital. Wang Chong took a deep breath, his heart shivering. This was the first time he experienced the terror of the art of god and demon obliteration. Moreover, it wasn't So Young-sun who told him about it, but Wang Chong himself comprehended it. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was filled with thoughts, and he suddenly remembered many things from the past. The foreign steel cavalry back then not only had great strength, but they also had a terrifying defense. Their bodies were very dense, strong, and tough, and they had almost no weaknesses. Many fatal injuries had no effect on them. Many powerful techniques used by humans on the battlefield had no effect on them. Even if they were pierced by swords and sabers, they wouldn't be much of a hindrance. Many powerful killing techniques would be greatly reduced when used by them. The offensive and defensive strength of both sides were on completely different levels. Because of this, humans suffered heavy casualties in their battles against them. Many famous foreign armies of the Tang dynasty and the foreign steel cavalry were annihilated right in front of them. Blood and death created the reputation of these foreign steel cavalry. But their strength was even more terrifying than their reputation. On the battlefield, humans were almost completely unable to fight back. Wang Chong had seen 1,000-strong foreign steel cavalry sweep through a human army of nearly 10,000 with his own eyes. Even the army that Wang Chong had trained had been the result of a collective effort, the combined strength of all the human race. That was the last of humanity's strength. But it was under such circumstances that So Yung-sun was able to single-handedly kill nearly 10,000 foreign steel cavalry. When Wang Chong heard of this before, he only felt that So Yung-sun was very powerful. But he didn't know just how powerful he was. He had been in contact with So Yung-sun for more than 3 months, and So Yung-sun had never displayed his martial arts in front of him. Even when they parted at the end, he only used the air absorption palm, which wasn't anything special. So in their daily interactions, Wang Chong's understanding of So Yung-sun was that this was a stubborn, persistent, isolated old man who was immersed in the past and sorrow, and lived an unhappy life. But as for his strength, Wang Chong couldn't estimate it. This was the first time Wang Chong had a vague understanding of So Yung-sun and the tip of the iceberg of the art of god and demon obliteration. Those foreign cavalry in the capital probably died extremely miserable deaths, Wang Chong said with a sigh. Wang Chong thought. Given the might of the art of god and demon obliteration, Wang Chong was sure that those foreign steel cavalry back then must have been riddled with holes. Under such circumstances, no matter how resilient and compact one's body was, death was the only outcome for them. The art of god and demon obliteration is indeed one of the strongest sword arts in the Central Plains. Given the might of this sword chi, even if I were to face a true martial realm expert, I am confident that I can pierce through the stellar energy around their body and threaten their body. At this point, Wang Chong's heart calmed down, and he was even more certain that the art of god and demon obliteration that So Yung-sun gave him was the basic version of the art of god and demon obliteration. This secret art was much more powerful than Wang Chong had imagined. With this secret art, Wang Chong was even more confident that he could carry out his plans. In the next few days, Wang Chong did nothing but cultivate in the dark room, nurturing his sword chi step by step. The cultivation of the art of god and demon obliteration was completely different from ordinary martial arts. To cultivate this kind of top-notch sword art, the first step was to circulate the origin chi in one's meridians and compress it step by step, turning it from thick to thin, becoming denser and denser. When it was compressed to the extreme, when there was only a sliver left, the origin chi would turn into sword chi. This process was extremely difficult to cultivate. But the next step was the most important. When the vital energy was compressed to the extreme and finally turned into sword chi that was as thin as a gossamer, what he had to do next was to do the opposite. He had to constantly nurture the sword intent and sword chi, and then grow the thin sword chi step by step, from thin to thick, and then to thicker and stronger sword chi step by step. This step was even more difficult to cultivate. The nurturing of sword intent had to be done at all times, not the slightest bit careless. As time slowly passed, Wang Chong's sword intent improved every day. From the thin strand at the beginning, it slowly doubled in size, and then slowly increased. Even though the cultivation of sword chi was different from the growth of one's inner strength, Wang Chong could still sense that his strength was growing by the day. When Wang Chong's sword chi of massacre condensed to the thickness of a chopstick, Wang Chong could clearly sense that the growth of his sword chi had slowed down. Wang Chong was no stranger to this feeling. It was a bottleneck. It's about time. It's probably due to my cultivation realm restricting my cultivation. Given my origin energy tier 7 cultivation, I can only cultivate the sword chi of massacre to this level. If I want to advance further, I'll probably have to wait until I reach origin energy tier 8. In the dark room, with a thought, Wang Chong shot out a surge of sword chi from his fingertip. Different from before, this surge of sword chi wasn't 10 centimeters long but around 3 chi. Its radiance was even more blinding than the sun, and it flickered at the tip of the sword. Only Wang Chong and his sword chi of massacre were capable of such a feat. For a mere origin energy realm cultivator to possess such powerful sword chi, this was something only Wang Chong and his sword chi of massacre were capable of. Chi. Wang Chong brandished his sword, and the sword chi sliced across the wall lightly. Immediately, a piece of steel the size of tofu was scraped off from the wall as though it was nothing. The entire process was unimaginably easy. I'm almost done with my cultivation. It's about time for me to head out. After spending another 2 days in the dark room, Wang Chong finally walked out. And it was at this moment that Wang Chong finally welcomed his guest. After more than 20 days of delay, the future imperial uncle Yang Zhao finally couldn't sit still any longer. Instead of looking for Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen, he ran to the Kunwu training camp to look for Wang Chong. The rules of Kunwu training camp were extremely strict. Even big uncle Wang Zhen had to contact Wang Chong via messenger pigeon if he wished to meet Wang Chong. After which, he had to wait outside the training camp before he could meet Wang Chong. However, Yang Zhao was different. Chapter 232. On the summit of Kunwu Mountain, Yang Zhao was wearing a black silk hat and a plain white robe. His head was held high and his chest was puffed out. He was surrounded by 4 burly and well-built guards of the Jin Wu Guards, giving off an extraordinary aura. A cool breeze blew on the summit. Yang Zhao had his hands behind his back and his robe fluttered along with the mountain breeze, giving him an outstanding appearance. It had only been a few months since he entered the capital, but Yang Zhao had already imitated that official's demeanor to a great degree. If one didn't know better, they would have already felt reverence for Yang Zhao and regarded him as a peerless scholar just by looking at his back and appearance. Wang Chong knew about Yang Zhao's background and had also seen him in dire straits. But even so, every time he saw Yang Zhao, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh in admiration. He also felt some admiration for this future imperial uncle. Putting aside what talent he had to learn, Yang Zhao's studious attitude was truly admirable. Not everyone was as diligent as Yang Zhao and could imitate the demeanor of a great scholar in just 2 to 3 months. Rumor had it that this future imperial uncle was already on good terms with some of the ministers in the imperial court. For a person to be so diligent, even if he's a gambling addict, he's still a genius. Wang Chong sighed inwardly. It wasn't without reason that Yang Zhao was able to climb to such a high position despite his humble origins. In Wang Chong's view, the scene before him was enough to explain a lot of things. Calming himself down, Wang Chong was soon led down by an instructor. Right now, Yang Zhao was patrolling on behalf of the heavens. If Yang Zhao wanted to see him, Wang Chong really couldn't refuse. Buzz! Standing on a protruding rock, Yang Zhao heard the commotion behind him and turned around. Ha! Wang Chong, long time no see. Seeing Wang Chong, Yang Zhao's eyebrows relaxed, and he beamed with joy. He jumped down from the protruding rock and strode over with an enthusiastic look on his face. Lord Yang. Wang Chong also greeted him with a smile. TSK, Wang Chong, I haven't seen you for more than a month, but you look very different this time. Yang Zhao sized up Wang Chong, and he immediately noticed the change in Wang Chong's temperament. He looked surprised. It seems that this Kunwu training camp is really good at training people. I almost don't recognize you anymore. Yang Zhao was right. Although the Wang Chong of the past was capable, he still gave people the feeling that he was a child who didn't have enough experience. But the current Wang Chong was like an unsheathed sword that had been tempered and sharpened, revealing its sharpness. His temperament had also become extremely fierce, and no one dared to underestimate him. No wonder Yang Zhao was surprised that such a big change could happen in just a month and a half. Lord Yang, you flatter me. I'm still me. There's no change. Wang Chong denied it with a smile. He knew very well that this was not the power of the Kunwu training camp at all, but the change caused by the influence of the sword chi and sword will of slaughter, so Yongsun's life-killing sword. But Wang Chong would not reveal this in front of Yang Zhao. Hee, of course you can't see it. But we can see it. Yang Zhao looked at Wang Chong with a strange look in his eyes. Well, that's enough. You can leave now. I would like to take a walk with young Master Wang. Yang Zhao suddenly walked past Wang Chong and spoke to the instructor who informed Wang Chong. Then, he waved his hands and dismissed the 4 chamberlains of imperial insignia. Hee, little brother, are you interested in taking a walk with me? When there was no one around, Yang Zhao suddenly smiled and extended his palm to Wang Chong. If anyone else were here, they would surely be shocked. To think that the cousin of consort Tai Zhen would become sworn brothers with the son of Duke Jiu. Hee, big brother, please lead the way. Hearing the change in Yang Zhao's manner of address, Wang Chong immediately understood and followed behind. The two of them walked side by side, one on the left and the other on the right. Big brother, is there anything you need? Wang Chong went straight to the point. Let's talk about it. Yang Zhao purposely put on a hesitant expression, as if he found it hard to speak. To tell you the truth, I have come to the Kunwu training camp with a request. Oh. Wang Chong looked at Wang Chong doubtfully, but he was chuckling inside. Most likely, Yang Zhao didn't know that big uncle Wang Zhen was already here. Even though Wang Chong didn't pay much attention to the affairs of the royal court, he knew that big uncle Wang Zhen was right. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianqiong entering the royal court had probably reached a critical juncture. Or rather, this matter seemed to be a little uncertain at the moment. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianqiong entering the great court had probably reached a critical juncture. Or rather, this matter seemed a little uncertain right now. The matter of Zhangqiu Jianqiong entering the royal court had probably reached a critical juncture. Looks like Yang Zhao is even more anxious than Zhangqiu Jianqiong on this matter. Wang Chong thought. I don't know. Second brother doesn't pay much attention to the royal court. The matter of Southern Protector General Zhangqiu Jianqiong entering the royal court has already caused a huge uproar in the royal court. In truth, back when I was in Jiannan, Lord Zhangqiu helped me a lot. If not for him, Yang Zhao would have already starved to death on the road to Jiannan Pass. This time, Lord Zhangqiu wishes to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel. Yang Zhao thinks that one mustn't forget one's roots. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Lord Zhangqiu once helped me and saved my life, so this time, no matter what, I hope to fulfill this dream of his. Yang Zhao said earnestly. Those who didn't know the truth might really think that Yang Zhao was doing this to repay a debt of gratitude. However, Wang Chong already knew the ins and outs of this matter. Regardless of what Yang Zhao's reason was, there was one thing that was certain. Yang Zhao wanted to insert Zhangqiu Jianqiong into the royal court so as to pave the way for him to ascend to the throne. Working hard for Zhangqiu Jianqiong was ultimately for himself. Similarly, Consort Taizhen shared the same sentiments behind this matter. It was too lonely in the royal court, especially after experiencing the Consort Taizhen incident and being ostracized by the other officials. The fervor in Consort Taizhen's heart was probably no less than Zhangqiu Jianqiong's. Big brother, what do you wish for me to do? Wang Chong flung his sleeves lightly as he walked down the spine of Kunwu Mountain together with Yang Zhao. Second brother, I know that your big uncle is an influential official in the royal court, and the Wang clan wields great influence in the royal court. I know that this request of mine is a little overboard, but I am indebted to Lord Zhangqiu. Can I ask your big uncle to? As Yang Zhao spoke, he found it hard to continue. Of course. Before Yang Zhao could finish his words, Wang Chong suddenly burst into laughter and said resolutely. Ah! Yang Zhao was stunned. Why you can? Second brother, you don't even know what I am talking about. Hee, didn't you want me to ask my big uncle to support Lord Zhangqiu Jianqiong in the royal court? Wang Chong said. Yang Zhao stared at Wang Chong in disbelief, completely dumbfounded. It wasn't easy to convince Wang Chong to persuade his big uncle to support Zhangqiu Jianqiong. After all, this request was indeed a little overboard. In his heart, Yang Zhao had already made all sorts of preparations. Just that, he didn't expect that none of the methods that Yang Zhao had prepared would be useful. Before he could even finish his words, Wang Chong had already agreed to it. The surprise came so quickly that Yang Zhao was caught off guard. Second brother, are you really going to agree to it? Yang Zhao was still in disbelief, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. Wang Chong nodded. Big uncle had already told him that Yang Zhao would come to look for him. Since Zhangqiu Jianqiong was going to enter the capital sooner or later, it was best for him to agree to it so that Zhangqiu Jianqiong wouldn't owe him a huge debt of gratitude. Since Big Brother has spoken, if there's a need, I can make a trip down the mountain to look for my big uncle personally. Wang Chong said. That's great. Second brother, allow me to thank you on behalf of Lord Zhangqiu. Yang Zhao was overjoyed. He knew of Wang Chong's current standing in the Wang clan. On the day Wang Chong was released from prison, even the king of Song went to his residence to welcome him. From this, one could imagine how high Wang Chong's standing was. If Wang Chong were to appear, the chances of this matter succeeding would be much higher. Second brother, if this matter succeeds and Lord Zhangqiu becomes the Minister of War, I'll definitely introduce him to you. I'll have him thank you properly. Yang Zhao said happily. He had already contacted quite a few people in the royal court, but it was a pity that none of them dared to step forward. For the time being, he was completely helpless. If the Wang clan and Wang Chong's big uncle were to make a call, given the Wang clan's influence and consort Taizhen's influence, there was a high chance that this matter would succeed. This matter concerned his future. Yang Zhao had no choice but to get acquainted with it. We'll talk about this matter after Lord Zhangqiu succeeds. Right, big brother, you came from the south. I would like to ask if you know a Lord Zhang Wentua. Wang Chong asked casually, but his eyes were staring intently at Yang Zhao. It was clear that he was very concerned about this matter. Jiannan Commandery Chief Zhang Wentua? Yang Zhao asked in astonishment. Despite the short name, Wang Chong's heart jolted in shock. Zhang Wentua. To think that Yang Zhao would really be acquainted with Zhang Wentua from the south. In a flash, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, countless thoughts flitting through it. Second brother, why would you ask this question? Could it be that your Wang clan is acquainted with Zhang Wentua? Yang Zhao's astonished voice sounded in Wang Chong's ears. Yang Zhao was indeed perplexed. Zhang Wentua was the commandery chief of Jiannan. Even though it sounded like a significant position, it was just a title given to him in name. In truth, his authority wasn't too great. In the Tang dynasty, there were at least 100 commanders-in-chief like Zhang Wentua. In the Tang dynasty, there were only a handful of people who knew of the name Zhang Wentua. Yang Zhao was perplexed as to why Wang Chong would be associated with such a person. He had stayed in Jiannan before. Even so, he didn't pay much attention to this Jiannan commandery chief. However, as a scion of the capital, Wang Chong had never stepped out of the borders of the capital. It was truly perplexing that he would know of a mere commandery chief by the borders. Wang Chong didn't say a word. He could see Yang Zhao's expression clearly. Wang Chong knew what Wang Chong was thinking. The current Zhang Wentua was indeed an unknown figure, but Wang Chong knew that his name would resound across the entire Middle Earth in the future, influencing the fate of the entire Tang dynasty. On top of that, the lives of the 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty would be tied together. This unknown Zhang Wentua would become an existence that no one could ignore in 2 years' time. Chapter 233. I've only heard of Prefect Zhang's name from my family. Right, I heard that Prefect Zhang is a womanizer. Wang Chong feigned nonchalance. Ha, brother, where did you hear that from? Hearing Wang Chang's comical words, Yang Zhao couldn't help but burst into laughter. Zhang Wentua is a military general, and I've only seen him from afar once. He's an extremely courageous man. I've never seen him enter a brothel or a brothel before. Many people laugh at him, saying that he's a monk. However, I did hear from Lord Zhangqiu that Prefect Zhang is a henpecked husband. Second younger brother, where did you hear such a ridiculous thing? Henpecked husband? A dark glint flashed across Wang Chang's eyes. Ha, I get it now. Brother, you're not young anymore. You should know how it feels to be a woman now. Don't worry, when you're free, I'll bring you to the brothel in the capital after you leave the Kunwu training camp. Yang Zhao spoke as though he was a seasoned veteran, and Wang Chong felt a headache coming on. This wasn't the reason why he asked about Zhang Wentua. Yang Zhao had clearly misunderstood his intentions. Wang Chong hurriedly interjected to divert Yang Zhao's attention. After which, he probed about Jiannan Prefect Zhang Wentua before finding an excuse to send Yang Zhao back. Zhang Wentua is a henpecked husband? What's going on? After Yang Zhao left, Wang Chong sat on a boulder at the foot of the mountain and fell into deep thought. Even before Yang Zhao left, he had taken Wang Chang's final question as a joke. If he knew what he was thinking and why he would ask about Zhang Wentua, Wang Chong dared to bet that Yang Zhao would be dumbfounded. In truth, when that matter broke out in the future, Wang Chong was sure that when Yang Zhao recalled today's conversation, he would definitely be greatly shocked. Wang Chong didn't ask about Zhang Wentua casually. The Battle of Nanzhao. This was the real reason why Wang Chong asked about this matter. In the future, the Great Tang would face an enormous and bitter war in the southeast. In the Great Tang's history of invincibility, this was its first and most grievous defeat. 180,000 elite Tang soldiers, as well as countless officers, lay forever on the battlefield of the Great Tang's southeast, their blood flowing in rivers as they died. This defeat shook the entire Central Plains, and it would affect the fate of the Tang dynasty for decades to come. The Annan Protectorate Manor, which Zhangqiu Jianxiong had guarded for decades, was disbanded, and the 5 great protectorates were reduced to the 4 great protectorates. The southern edge of the empire lost its barrier, and countless civilians were affected. The casualties numbered in the millions. And all of this, if one were to look into it, was because of a man and 2 women. The man was the Jiannan commander-in-chief, Zhang Wentua, and the 2 women. Those 2 women weren't ordinary women. They were the beautiful wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng. No one witnessed the entire incident, and that was because it was impossible for such a thing to happen. Wang Chong only knew the truth that he was familiar with later on. Zhang Wentua was lustful by nature. In the vassal state of the Tang dynasty, the wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng, found an opportunity to pay a visit to the capital, and they were raped and murdered in the city lord manor. When Jelifeng received the news, he flew into a rage and led an army to attack the Tang dynasty to exact vengeance for his wife and daughter. In the end, Zhang Wentua also died in this war. Zhang Wentua was lustful and humiliated the wife and daughter of the king of Mengshi Zhao, Jelifeng. This led to the war, and 180,000 elite Tang dynasty soldiers were buried in the southeast. Such a heinous crime wasn't to be regretted even if he died. After the Battle of Nanzhao, the anger of the entire nation was focused on Zhang Wentua. There were even people who dug up Zhang Wentua's corpse and whipped it to vent their anger. After that war, Zhang Wentua was condemned by the entire nation. Wang Chong didn't know any Zhang Wentua. Jiannan was simply too far away, and Zhang Wentua was simply too low profile. Even someone like Yang Zhao, who had spent time in Jiannan, didn't know much about Zhang Wentua, let alone others. However, Wang Chong still felt that there was something fishy about the Jiannan incident that led to the Battle of Nanzhao. The reason was simple. Zhang Wentua had committed suicide. Jelifeng had mobilized his army to attack the city. As the governor of Jiannan, Zhang Wentua knew that he had committed a grave sin. Thus, he didn't choose to retreat or escape. Instead, he chose to commit suicide to atone for his crimes. This was something that even Jelifeng couldn't deny. No one knew who was in the right and who was in the wrong back then. This was because everything had happened in the city lord manor. If Zhang Wentua had really abducted Zheluofeng's wife and daughter, then he would definitely conceal such a secretive matter from the public, not letting outsiders know about it. Other than those close to him, it was impossible for anyone else to know about it. This included Zhangqiu Jianxiong, who Yang Zhao said knew him very well. However, in that battle, everyone close to Zhang Wentua, including himself, had died. As such, the truth would never be known. And all of the truth had come from Zheluofeng's mouth alone. However, Jelifeng wasn't in the city during that incident. How could he, as the emperor of Mengxi Zhao, know about the affairs of the Tang dynasty? No one was able to verify this matter back then, needless to say, in the future. However, there was one thing that Wang Chong was certain of. It was impossible for a lustful person to commit suicide for his country. He might have been killed by those close to him, or he might have been killed by his enemies during the war, but it was impossible for him to commit suicide. As the saying goes, lust blinds one's mind. Those who would commit such acts would likely choose to retreat or escape, but it was impossible for them to commit suicide. A person who indulged in lust would never have the courage to commit suicide. Furthermore, Yang Zhao had also said that Zhang Wentua was a henpecked man who didn't like lust, and he would never go to a brothel. On this point, Wang Chong trusted him completely. However, Jelifeng's wife and daughter had indeed died in Jiannan, and this was something that couldn't be denied. Zheluofeng was the leader of a generation. Although he was also extremely ambitious, he wouldn't joke about being cuckolded. The entire Jiannan incident was shrouded in mystery, and there were too many inconsistencies and contradictions in it. In his previous life, this was destined to be a mystery that no one could unravel. But in this life, no matter what, Wang Chong was determined to unravel this mystery. This was because Wang Chong knew that Zhang Wentua's life wasn't at stake alone, but the lives of millions of soldiers and civilians of the Tang dynasty, as well as every single person living in the Central Plains. If Zhangqiu Jianxiong were to become the ruler of the Central Plains, it would only be a matter of time before he enters the capital. As the Jiannan commander-in-chief, Zhang Wentua would have to enter the capital once every 3 years to report on his duties. This year's transfer of the Southern Protector General is a huge matter. Even if it wasn't the 3-year deadline, Zhang Wentua would still have to enter the capital once to be questioned by the Holy Emperor and the royal court. When Zhang Wentua enters the capital, at that time, whether it is true or false, whether Zhang Wentua is truly loyal to the emperor and his country and has suffered an injustice, or whether he is a man with 2 faces, a man who appears to be loyal and treacherous, a treacherous hero with great forbearance, at that time we will know. Wang Chong raised his head to look at the clouds in the sky, and many thoughts were running through his mind. Zhang Wentua was a commander-in-chief of the Tang dynasty, and not everyone would have the opportunity to come into contact with him. However, Wang Chong and the Wang clan would definitely have the opportunity to do so. Zhang Wentua's arrival in the capital will take at least 2 months. There's no need to rush into this matter. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong left the foot of the mountain. Right now, he had another important matter to attend to. Gongzi. At the foot of the mountain, in a low-lying area filled with lush trees, Wang Chong saw Zhuang Zhengping and Qi Siwei. When the two of them saw Wang Chong, they could vaguely sense the sword qi in his body, and a sliver of fear flashed through their eyes. Zhuang Zhengping, Qi Siwei, have you brought the experts from your clans? Wang Chong said. They have long been here. The two of them nodded. They had rushed over upon receiving Wang Chong's message. Upon hearing that Wang Chong wanted to mobilize the experts from the Zhuang and Qi clans, how could they dare to delay? Yi! Two sharp cries sounded, and in an instant, the earth trembled and dust billowed. The sound of galloping horses could be heard from the forest in the distance. Wherever the galloping horses passed, the trees would creak loudly. It was as though a massive beast was charging out of the forest. Neigh! A long neigh could be heard, and in the blink of an eye, a monstrous and huge horse could be seen leaping out of the forest. The huge war horse galloped over 10 zhang away, flying high above everyone's heads. At that moment, Wang Chong could clearly see a tall and muscular heavy armored knight on the back of the horse. His eyes were filled with disdain, and his aura was astonishing. That fluttering cape seemed to cover the entire sky. Bang! The war horse landed on all fours, and with a turn, it landed behind Wang Chong and the others. Beneath the war horse, a brilliant light burst forth. In an instant, a dazzling blue halo of thorns rippled out from the warhorse's hooves and spread out in all directions. Young master! The heavy armored knight from the Zhuang clan sat on top of the horse, looking straight ahead. His entire body was emitting a heavy aura that was as heavy as steel. Although Wang Chong didn't know his background, he could feel a strong sense of threat from him. Without a doubt, this person was very powerful. The Zhuang clan's iron cavalry is indeed worthy of its name. Wang Chong looked at the heavy armored knight with a strange look in his eyes. The number of iron cavalry in the Zhuang clan was limited. When he became the commander of the Zhuang clan, most of the iron cavalry in the Zhuang clan had died on the battlefield. Therefore, Wang Chong didn't have the chance to meet the famous iron cavalry of the Zhuang clan. This was the first time he saw the famous iron cavalry of the Zhuang clan. The war horse of the Zhuang clan was especially strong and tall. It was a head taller than ordinary war horses. Moreover, its bones and muscles were especially strong and powerful. The most obvious ones were its forelimbs and neck. The muscles were bulging, and they were full of power. Chapter 234. Chapter 335, Good Steeds. Wang Chong was overjoyed. As a cavalryman, half of their strength came from their steeds. As a former Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, Wang Chong was quite fond of these steel steeds. Steeds, armor, and knights all require special training. The Zhuang clan has undoubtedly formed a system. These steel steeds are extremely important to the clan. No wonder the Zhuang clan has such strict restrictions on them. Wang Chong thought to himself. Kacha kacha. Just as he was deep in thought, a series of crisp snapping sounds came from the forest. Amidst the snapping sounds, one tree after another fell to the ground. One could vaguely make out the sound of a sharp object chopping something. In the forest, no matter how thick or thin the trees were, there was nothing that could stop a sharp object from chopping down. Boom boom boom. A moment later, 3 huge trees were chopped down in front of everyone. The huge tree trunks fell in 3 different directions. Behind the trees, 2 burly men with bulky limbs walked out of the forest calmly. They looked like glaring Vajras and they were fully armored. Their gazes were sharp, and their footsteps were uniform. But the most eye-catching of all were the huge axes in their hands. The imposing aura they exuded made it seem as if they could even split a mountain in half. The Qi clan's steel guards. Even without Qi Weixi's introduction, Wang Chong already knew the identity of these axe-wielding men. The axes of the Qi clan were exquisitely made. Not only was the surface as smooth as a mirror, there was also a blood-red coiling dragon on each side. The Qi clan's axes were more than 3 Qi long, and anyone who laid eyes on them would shudder in fear. If the Qi clan's steel guards were placed on the battlefield, they would be able to split men and horses into 2. In an intense battlefield, these people were the best weapons to break through head-on. There was almost nothing that could stop those terrifying axes. Young master. The 2 of them murmured to each other and nodded slightly as a form of greeting. Be it the Zhuang clan or the Qi clan, these steel steeds and steel guards were strategic forces with special identities. This is young Master Wang Chong, a descendant of Duke Jiu. For the next few days, they will follow young master and do their best to assist him. Zhuang Jinping and Qi Weisi ordered their cavalry and guards. Yes, young master. Hearing the name Duke Jiu, the Zhuang family's cavalrymen and the two Qi family's steel guards immediately showed respect in their eyes. In the Tang dynasty, Duke Jiu was highly respected. This was not only in the court, but also in the army. If this person was of Duke Jiu's bloodline, then his identity could be deduced. Thinking of this, the few of them became even more respectful. Young master, are these people enough? Do you want us to transfer more people over? Yes, although it's very difficult to mobilize the power of the family. However, if it's young Master Wang, I believe that the clan will agree to it. Zhuang Jinping and Qi Weisi said. When they entered the Kunwu training camp this time, the two of them had received orders to befriend Wang Chong of the Wang family no matter what. The family would go all out for any need. There's no need. These people are enough. Wang Chong waved his hands, rejecting their kind intentions. What he was going to do next wasn't to fight head-on on the battlefield. Furthermore, this wasn't something that could be resolved with just a direct confrontation. The three of them were more than enough. Come out. After Zhuang Jinping and Qi Weisi left, Wang Chong suddenly stopped in the forest. Clang! In an instant, sabers and axes vibrated, and battle armor buzzed. The two Qi family's steel guards and Zhuang family's cavalrymen gathered their strength as they surveyed their surroundings warily. Yet, the surroundings were completely silent. Other than the whistling of the wind, there was nothing else. Young master, the three of them turned around and looked at Wang Chong in astonishment. They were all true martial realm experts, but they didn't notice anything at all. They had no idea how an origin energy realm cultivator like Wang Chong managed to notice anything. Wang Chong smiled faintly as he surveyed the surroundings, not bothering to explain anything. So, without the slightest sign, at a place very close to the crowd, with a swoosh, a petite black shadow suddenly appeared. She leaped from the branches of a camphor tree and suddenly swept over the top of the crowd's head, leaving behind countless afterimages. Her speed was inconceivable. Be careful. Enemy attack. The three of them exclaimed in shock. Chi, the air split apart as two massive axes cleaved down at the black figure above them with lightning speed. At the same time, the cavalrymen on horseback were also startled. The steel spears in their hands trembled, and like an enraged dragon, they stabbed at the black figure above them. Clang! That petite black shadow lightly tapped the ground with the tip of her foot. In midair, she lightly tapped the surface of the axes of the two Qi family iron guards as if she was flipping over the ground. At the same time, the sword at her waist flicked lightly, striking the tip of the Zhuang family steel guard's spear. Borrowing the momentum, she somersaulted in the air and landed lightly on the ground on the other side. This miraculous scene left the three of them dumbfounded. They had never met such a formidable opponent before. Her entire body was light as a feather, as though she wasn't affected by any force at all. Kill her. The faces of the trio froze, and killing intent surged in their hearts. The war steeds neighed loudly, and the spear lord roared loudly. Just as they were about to strike the black figure down from their steeds, stop. Hee, you'll know once you follow me. With a flick of his sleeve, Wang Chong began to walk forward. At the west of the city, near the falling jade pavilion, there was a majestic gambling den that stood amidst a cluster of buildings. On the arched golden roof stood a golden three-legged golden crow instead of a common dragon species in the Middle Earth. Other than that, this gambling den didn't look any different from the other gambling dens in the Central Plains. In fact, beneath the roof were rows of red lanterns. Golden Sky Gambling Den. Wang Chong was seated on the railing of the second floor of a tavern opposite the gambling den. Sipping on green wine, he surveyed the gambling den with interest. The three-legged crow was a symbol of faith and worship for the Goguryons, and it wasn't a secret to Wang Chong. However, there weren't many people in the Central Plains who knew about it. After all, Goguryeo was situated in the northeast, a long distance away. On top of that, the Goguryeo Empire had a strict customs policy, so there weren't many people in the Central Plains who knew about it. The west of the city was the territory of the Goguryons. Most of the places where the three-legged crow was hung or where the carvings of the three-legged crow could be seen, were Goguryons' territories. In fact, even the tavern that Wang Chong was in at the moment was likely the property of the Goguryons. Seated on the railing, Wang Chong narrowed his eyes as many thoughts flashed through his mind. The Goguryeo Empire had a strict customs policy, forbidding outsiders from entering, especially those from the Central Plains Tang dynasty. Thus, it wasn't easy to infiltrate their country. However, the Central Plains Tang dynasty was completely different from them. Regardless of which power they were at war with, the Tang dynasty never forbade the entry of other countries. It was a completely tolerant attitude, accommodating those from other countries. All merchants were protected under the Tang dynasty. In fact, even the Chamberlain of Dependencies had set up a law specifically to protect these merchants who came to trade. Even though Wang Chong was dissatisfied with many of the actions of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, he had to admit that the Tang dynasty's open and tolerant attitude had benefited him greatly. It was clear that the Great Tang's current prosperity was inextricably linked to this open and tolerant attitude toward trade. This was also the reason why the Goguryons were able to survive in the capital of the Tang dynasty despite the tense relationship between the Goguryeo Empire and the Tang dynasty. The Goguryons even opened gambling dens, taverns, tea houses, horse stalls, and so on, and the Tang dynasty never forbade them from doing so. It wasn't that the Tang dynasty was so heartless. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments had worked together to investigate them, and they even had a team specially assigned to monitor these Goguryons day and night. But the final result was that there was nothing wrong with these Goguryons. They were all pure merchants. This surveillance lasted for more than a decade, and eventually, even the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments gave up on it. Chapter 235. Have you made the necessary arrangements? Wang Chong tapped on the railing lightly with his index and middle finger, producing a crisp sound. Everything is ready. Mayasame Ayaka replied calmly. She stood behind Wang Chong with her head held high and her hands behind her back, not moving in the slightest. In such a short period of time, she had already changed her attire. She was wearing a black bamboo hat with a thin veil hanging down around it. As the veil shook slightly, it completely covered her face, making it blurry and indistinct. However, her eyes were still as cold as ever. Even through the veil, one could still feel a chill seeping into their bones. Mayasame Ayaka's disposition as an assassin was deeply ingrained in her bones. Regardless of what she wore, it was impossible to conceal it. Very well. Tell them to pay attention to the person with a white halo around him later on. We only have an instant, so make sure to keep a close eye on him. Also, you just have to watch carefully. No one is to make a move. Wang Chong said impassively. As he spoke, he stretched out his arm and passed the wine cup in his hand over. It was indeed a little early for a 15-year-old to be drinking, but he could still learn to interact with it. Not to mention, there was another soul hidden in his body. But Gongzi, is this really fine? This is the territory of the Goguryons. Furthermore, when we were discussing this matter, we were in the abode of the Goguryons. Mayasame Ayaka squatted down slightly and took the cup from Wang Chong's hands naturally before placing it on the table by the side. The women of Yingzhou were surprisingly docile in this aspect. Even though Mayasame Ayaka had become an assassin, she was still able to maintain her composure. Of course, this was only applied to those who were stronger than her. The Gogurians are vicious, and there are many of them. If we were to anger them, we might not be able to leave this place. Mayasame Ayaka glanced at Wang Chong with deep worry in her eyes. Ordinary people knew nothing about the Gogurians, so they were able to remain calm here. But to those who knew the ins and outs of the Gogurians, standing in this place was like a dagger to their backs. This was the feeling that Mayasame Ayaka was experiencing at the moment. She had crossed hands with the Gogurians before, and they were fearsome people. When they fought, they were even more ferocious than assassins like them. Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but worry that Wang Chong intended to deal with them in the territory of the Gogurians. Who said that this is the territory of the Gogurians? This is still the territory of the Central Plains, so when did the Gogurians have the right to call the shots here? Wang Chong stretched out a hand and leaned on the railing. He looked at the dense crowd outside and sneered. The Central Plains was still around, and the Tang dynasty was still around. The calamity hadn't arrived yet, and the Central Plains wasn't so weak that it had to bow down to the Gogurians. When did the Gogurians become the ones making the decisions here? In the past, they didn't make a move on the Gogurians because the Gogurians were well behaved and didn't do anything too outrageous. However, since they were restless and wanted to make a move on the Tang dynasty, everything was different. At this point, Wang Chong gazed out of the railing, and his eyes turned colder and colder. Not even Wang Chong himself had sensed that as he spoke, his body was exuding a chilling and domineering aura. The 3 cavalrymen from the Zhuang clan and the Qi clan guards were taken aback. Even Mayasame Ayaka was dumbfounded. This Wang Chong exuded an intimidating aura that instilled fear in others. It was completely different from their impression of him. But even so, we don't have any evidence. We don't have any evidence to prove that the Gogurians are related to the people here. If we are careless and leave behind some evidence, the Chamberlain of Dependencies might turn against Gongzi. Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly. She knew what Wang Chong was up to. To be assaulted by the Gogurians on his first day in the camp and nearly die on White Tiger Peak, anyone would be infuriated. However, the Gogurians in the West were different from others. Even though they were known to be loan sharks and teach those who didn't pay their debts a lesson, other than that, they didn't do anything out of line. Otherwise, the Tang dynasty wouldn't have tolerated them. Evidence? Of course I will. Wang Chong sneered coldly as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. It seemed like the fact that the Gogurians in the west of the city were law-abiding citizens had spread far and wide. Even an assassin like Mayasame Ayaka knew that there was nothing wrong with the Gogurians. However, Wang Chong had a completely different view of the matter. King Sojurim and his group of Gogurian assassins were infamous in Great Tang, and everyone knew of them. Even though many people claimed that they had nothing to do with the Gogurians in the West. But how could Wang Chong possibly believe them? Birds of a feather flocked together. It was impossible for a person to leave their source. How could it be possible for King Sojurim and his group of Gogurian assassins to have nothing to do with the Gogurians here? With so many Gogurians here, this was the best hiding place for King Sojurim and his group of Gogurians. Other than here, King Sojurim and his group of assassins wouldn't be able to do as they pleased anywhere else. Even though the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments had been monitoring them for decades, they didn't manage to find anything. But in Wang Chong's view, they had missed out on an important corner. The densely packed customers who frequented the taverns and gambling dens. Who said that Gogurians could only work in Gogurian restaurants, gambling dens, and shops as Gogurians? Why couldn't Gogurians pretend to be Han? As long as one could master the language of the Central Plains, there would be no difference between a Gogurian and a Han. Wang Chong had thought it through before. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments weren't useless people. The only reason why they hadn't found anything in the past decades was that they had been heading in the wrong direction from the start. The person they were looking for wasn't in the taverns or taverns. Rather, it was somewhere else. Make the arrangements and have them carry it out immediately. Recovering from his daze, Wang Chong waved his hands. Yes, Gongzi. After a moment of hesitation, Mayasame Ayaka nodded. Outside the railing, a huge crowd could be seen. Standing in the tavern, Wang Chong and Mayasame Ayaka didn't attract anyone's attention. In such a luxurious place, there were simply too many scions like Wang Chong. Time slowly ticked by, and around half a tea's time later, Wang Chong finally stood up. Amidst the bewildered gazes of the crowd, he slowly walked to the railing. Whether these Gogurians are innocent or not, we'll know soon enough. Wang Chong's gaze swept past the railing and landed on the huge crowd outside. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Pang! Without any warning, Wang Chong raised his right leg and stomped lightly on the ground. Pang! In the next instant, an invisible ripple spread out in all directions with Wang Chong at the center. In the most prosperous area of the Gogurian-controlled territory in the west of the city, Wang Chong released his bane of the battlefield halo. The royal court had never been able to differentiate between real Gogurian merchants and Gogurian assassins. But Wang Chong was different. The bane of the battlefield halo was the best way to identify such Gogurians. Wang! The crowd outside the railing was silent, and there didn't seem to be any changes. Looking outside, Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up. Did I guess wrongly? Just when Wang Chong thought that his bane of the battlefield halo was ineffective, a sudden change occurred. In Wang Chong's sight, a white ripple suddenly appeared amidst the crowd, enveloping a plump man who seemed to be a wealthy merchant of the Central Plains. Then, a second, a third, 11, 12, 13, 30, 40, 50, in just a short period of time, several hundred ripples of light appeared amidst the crowd in Golden Sky Gambling Den Wang. In just an instant, the white ripples vanished without a trace. It was so fast that one thought it was just an illusion. On the second floor of the tavern, Mayasame Ayaka and the Zhuang clan's cavalrymen and the Qi clan's guards had already noticed them. Even Wang Chong himself was so stunned that he couldn't speak. The surroundings were deathly silent. To think that there would be so many of them. The phenomenon caused by the bane of the battlefield only lasted for a short instant before vanishing. However, Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. In Wang Chong's initial plan, the bane of the battlefield halo was to identify the few Gogurians in the crowd. But the outcome far exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. There were actually several hundred Orthodox Gogurian warriors in the vicinity of a Golden Sky Gambling Denver. This number far exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. Furthermore, at the very last moment, Wang Chong clearly saw that the Gogurian warriors were dressed in Han attire. Regardless of how they moved, it was impossible to discern them at all. Wang Chong's conjecture had been verified. Did you see it clearly? Wang Chong asked. Behind him, it was quiet. Everyone was stunned by the scene just now. Gongzi, you've really guessed it. Mayasame Ayaka took in a deep breath. Deep astonishment could be heard in her voice. She had no idea how those white ripples appeared. But after hearing Wang Chong's warning, no matter how slow Mayasame Ayaka's reaction was, she could easily guess that those caught in the white ripples were the real targets. But wasn't this number a little too much? Lord, these Gogurians, shut up. Stop talking. Behind her, the Zhuang clan cavalrymen and Qi clan guards were shocked as well. But before they could finish their words, Mayasame Ayaka had already interrupted them. This place was too sensitive, and it wasn't a good place to talk about the Gogurians. It would have been fine if she didn't know, but now that she did, the atmosphere in this place immediately changed. Even Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but reveal a fearful expression. Don't bother too much about it. You should have seen the situation clearly, right? Let's settle the bill and leave. In contrast to Mayasame Ayaka's wariness, Wang Chong smiled calmly. Flinging his sleeves, he pushed aside the chair by the side and left the tavern. Chapter 236. Deep into the night, the capital fell silent. In the absence of his little sister, Wang Chong sat cross-legged in the study, breathing in and out. Strand after strand of origin energy immediately gathered and flowed into Wang Chong's body. Pang! After an unknown period of time, Wang Chong's body suddenly jolted, as if something had opened up. Wang Chong's aura abruptly changed, as if he had grown stronger. Qi! Intrigued, Wang Chong opened his eyes and raised his finger. Qi! In the next instant, a piercing cold gleam shot out from the tip of his finger. This cold gleam was only half a qi long, but it exuded an incomparably sharp aura. Opening the Guanyuan acupoint can indeed allow one to release sword qi and sword qi of massacre. Wang Chong thought as he stared at the sword qi at the tip of his finger. Cultivators below Origin Energy Tier 9 were unable to release their inner qi. However, this wasn't absolute. Wang Chong knew of a small trick. By opening a hidden Guanyuan acupoint, he would be able to release his inner qi and origin energy. However, there was a flaw in this method. Only the few meridians near the Guanyuan acupoint could release origin energy. At this moment, Wang Chong could only release sword qi through his index and middle fingers. This referred to sword qi. Sometimes, it could display unexpected effects. SSS. Suddenly, faint footsteps sounded from outside. They were as light as a cat's, and if one didn't pay attention, it would be impossible to tell them apart. Maya-same, come in. Wang Chong retracted his finger, dispelled the sword qi at the tip of his finger, and turned his gaze to the door. Jia, the door was pushed open, and a masked figure dressed in black walked in. It was Maya-same Ayaka. Gongzi, I've found their residence. Maya-same Ayaka dived straight into the topic after entering the room. Wang Chong's shoulders trembled slightly, and he abruptly raised his head to look at Maya-same Ayaka. To the southeast of the capital, near the edge of the city walls, a solitary courtyard quietly stood amidst the lush forest. In the capital, foreign merchants would often purchase real estate here, and this sort of isolated, single-door courtyard was extremely common in the capital. Is this the place you've been investigating? In the darkness, Wang Chong said while hiding in the crown of a camphor tree. From his corner, he could see a few lights in the courtyard. He could vaguely see the silhouettes of people coming and going, but it seemed that there weren't many of them. However, he could still see that the people in the courtyard were very vigilant. There were many open and hidden sentries. Wang Chong couldn't be more familiar with this. The first thing a scout in the army had to do when investigating a military situation was to eliminate the enemy's open and hidden sentries. When we followed those people, this was the first stronghold we found. Maya-same Ayaka said. Only her eyes were exposed, and the rest of her face was covered by a veil, making it impossible to see her expression. This place doesn't look like a hideout. Where are the others? Wang Chong turned around and asked with a slight frown. There's no news yet. It's difficult to follow those people. Furthermore, most of them haven't left yet. Maya-same Ayaka lowered her voice and said with a troubled expression. Following those Gogurians was far more difficult than she had imagined. Those who dared to disguise themselves as Han were all formidable experts. They were extremely familiar with the Tang dynasty. Furthermore, after so many years, they had already formed a complete system. The Gogurians opened casinos, taverns in the west of the city, and the Gogurian assassins, or rather, soldiers, disguised themselves as wealthy merchants, bodyguards, and travelers of the Central Plains to stay in the taverns. When Maya-same Ayaka noticed this, she was astonished. The craftiness of the Gogurians was far greater than she had imagined. Everyone only paid attention to the casinos, restaurants, and inns, as well as the Gogurians working in them. How many people would notice the Han customers and travelers staying in the lodgings of the inn? Without a doubt, the Gogurians had made use of this loophole in their thinking. Upon understanding this point, Mayasame Ayaka finally understood why the royal court of the Tang dynasty was unable to find anything wrong with them. Turning her gaze to Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka was even more astonished. It was as if Wang Chong had known this answer from the start. Recalling the matter regarding the specter steps, Mayasame Ayaka felt even more uneasy about it. If not for Wang Chong's age, she would have worshipped him as a god. Have you checked the interior? Wang Chong asked. There are roughly 30 people inside. The others are fine, but there's a particularly formidable expert in there. I dare not approach him. Mayasame Ayaka said with fear in her eyes. More than 30 people. Wang Chong frowned in contemplation. So. In the next instant, Wang Chong slid down the tree and disappeared without a trace. Gongzi, before Mayasame Ayaka could react, she realized that Wang Chong was nowhere to be seen. Gritting her teeth, Mayasame Ayaka slid down the tree and hurriedly chased after him. Wang Chong glanced around the perimeter of the courtyard, then carefully avoided the open and hidden sentries, circling around them. Qi Lu, Wang Chong climbed up the tree like a civet cat, climbed up the wall, and with a flip, he easily entered the courtyard. His movements were so agile that even Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. I'm here. Wang Chong landed lightly on the ground. There are 2 at the corridor, 2 in the bushes, 2 on the tree, and 3 in the open. There are a total of 8 patrolling guards. The courtyard was much larger than it appeared from the outside, and there were 8 Goguryeo warriors patrolling the area, surveying the surroundings warily. However, due to the size of the courtyard, it wasn't too difficult for Wang Chong to sneak in. Gongzi. A gust of wind blew, and a familiar voice carrying a faint aroma sounded from behind. Mayasame Ayaka followed behind and crouched in the bushes beside Wang Chong. Gongzi, it's too dangerous here. I suggest that you leave immediately. Mayasame Ayaka said worriedly. She was an assassin, and she possessed the specter steps, so it was easy for her to get around them. However, Wang Chong wasn't one of them. There were many Goguryeo experts here, and even she didn't dare to make a move recklessly. Needless to say, Wang Chong. If he were to be discovered and surrounded, he would be doomed. Don't worry, it's very safe here. Wang Chong faintly smiled. It was true that these people were wary, but Mayasame Ayaka had underestimated his capabilities. If not for the fact that he had a weakness, Wang Chong wouldn't have dared to barge in alone. So, Wang Chong scanned the surroundings, and before Mayasame Ayaka could react, Wang Chong had already gone around the periphery and sneaked in. Unlike Mayasame Ayaka, Wang Chong's speed wasn't too fast. He made use of the shadows, the bushes, the blind spots of the Goguryeo sentries, and the time difference to sneak in. Watching from behind, Mayasame Ayaka couldn't react for a long time. Roughly 7 to 8 breaths later, Wang Chong successfully snuck into the depths of the courtyard and hid behind a fallen fake mountain. The Goguryons clearly didn't understand the art of fake mountains in the Central Plains. As such, the fake mountains in the courtyard were in the way, so they were pushed down directly. This made things easier for Wang Chong. Wang Chong's sharp gaze swept across the courtyard. Even though it looked ordinary, Wang Chong noticed many obscure symbols in the courtyard. On the pillar of the corridor, there was the image of a red flame, and on the paper window, there was the silhouette of a red boy. And on the door of the opposite room, Wang Chong saw the symbol of an arrow cluster and quiver. This is a temporary base of the Goguryons, and its level isn't high. The person stationed here shouldn't be above true martial tier 5. Wang Chong thought. He had come into contact with the Goguryons and captured a few assassins before, so he knew some of their customs. The flame represented the sun, and it was usually imprinted on the corridor. This way, it wouldn't raise any suspicions. On the other hand, the red boy on the paper window represented the three-legged crow. The Goguryons believed that the three-legged crow could be transformed into a red boy. as the three-legged crow was too conspicuous in the central plains, and it would be weird if someone noticed it. Thus, it was much better to change it to a red boy. Other than that, the arrow cluster and quiver on the door represented the level of the base. The more arrows in the quiver, the higher the level. But no matter how high the level was, it wouldn't exceed 9 arrows. Other than that, the arrow cluster also represented another meaning. There was a master archer here, or more accurately, the Gogurians condor shooters. The Gogurians condor shooters were even more formidable than the master archers of the Turks. Any Gogurian gathering point or base with a condor slayer was equivalent to having a mobile fort. No matter how many people there were in the encirclement, with 40 to 50 arrows per arrow, they would surely suffer heavy casualties. At this point, Wang Chong couldn't help but rejoice. Mayasame Ayaka didn't understand the meaning behind these words. It was fortunate that he had made a trip here to take a look. Otherwise, if he were to call for reinforcements to surround the base without any preparation, he would surely suffer heavy casualties. In the end, he might even allow them to escape. These Gogurians sure are fearless. To think that they would even send their condor shooters here. They're treating this place as their own military base. Wang Chong was infuriated. In the Central Plains, Biaduzan, Mengshizhao, Abbasid Caliphate, Karak Spa Zenu, or the Turks, they all had their own spies. But the Gogurians were the most thorough of them all. The Gogurian warriors were scattered all over the Central Plains like a spider web, and they had already formed a massive power within the framework of the Tang dynasty. These Gogurian warriors weren't a group of vagrants. Rather, they had received direct support from the Gogurian Empire. Even an esteemed existence like the condor shooters was sent to the Central Plains. From this, it was clear how deeply the Gogurians had infiltrated the Central Plains. Looks like I have to find a way to eradicate them. Wang Chong thought. Chapter 237. Gongzi, we can't proceed any further. The Gogurian expert is right ahead. Just as Wang Chong was deep in thought, a soft but powerful hand suddenly reached out from behind and grabbed his arm. Besides, we still don't know if that Gogurian king Sojurim is here. If he's here, we might not even be able to escape if we were to be discovered. Mayasame Ayaka said anxiously. It wasn't a secret that Wang Chong wanted to deal with King Sojurim, but anything that involved the Gogurian spy was incomparably dangerous. Putting aside how elusive that person was, he had a large group of vicious and formidable Gogurian assassins under him. The first name that Mayasame Ayaka heard upon entering the assassin's circle was King Sojurim. If not for Wang Chong, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to provoke King Sojurim. Yet, Wang Chong was more daring than the heavens, sneaking here alone. Even she couldn't stop him. Ha, don't worry, your worries are unfounded. King Sojurim isn't here. At the very most, he's just a Turkic condor shooter. Wang Chong turned around and revealed his findings with a suppressed voice. If King Sojurim isn't here, then our operation is meaningless. It's not worth spending so much effort just for a Gogurian expert. Why don't we retreat for now? We'll inform the royal court after we leave, and the royal court will deal with this Gogurian base. Mayasame Ayaka persuaded softly. This was the safest method. Retreat? How can that be? Wang Chong chuckled. The reason why we're investigating the Gogurian base isn't to hand it over to the royal court. If Mayasame Ayaka thought that Wang Chong was doing this to exact vengeance for the Gogurians' night assault, she was being too naive. The reason why Wang Chong was investigating the Gogurians wasn't just to hand them over to the royal court. Wait here for me. Wang Chong's heart thumped. He suddenly moved his hands and feet like a giant black lizard. Shaking his head and wagging his tail, he quickly made his way to the room in front of him. Young master, shocked, Mayasame Ayaka reached out to grab him, but it was already too late. Mayasame Ayaka trembled in fear, and her face paled. The perception of a true martial realm martial artist was very sharp, even she did not dare to cross this distance. Wang Chong actually touched it just like that. But what was even more shocking was that Mayasame Ayaka could still sense Wang Chong's presence. But in the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's aura vanished from Mayasame Ayaka's senses like a bubble. Mayasame Ayaka could still vaguely make out Wang Chong's silhouette, but she couldn't sense his aura at all. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. This? Mayasame Ayaka was completely stunned. She wanted to go over, but she didn't dare to take the risk. What Wang Chong could do, she wasn't confident that she could. Oblivious to Mayasame Ayaka's thoughts, Wang Chong's tortoise-breathing art, which he had learned from Ablonodon and Arloja, came in handy at this moment. This tortoise hibernation, a mystical art of the Sindhi monks of the western regions, allowed one to bury oneself deep underground, sealing off all the pores of one's body, preventing the slightest bit of one's aura from leaking out. On top of that, one's metabolism would also be reduced to a snail's pace, allowing one to go without food or water for months or even years. This was something that even Wang Chong was unable to achieve back then. Back then, he was astonished when he heard of it. It could be considered as a legendary art born from the impoverished land of Sindhu. Even though it wasn't too powerful, it was extremely miraculous. Wang Chong's tortoise-breathing art hadn't reached the level where one would be fine without food or water for months or even years. However, sealing off all the pores of one's body to prevent the slightest bit of one's aura from leaking out was still possible. Under such circumstances, coupled with the celestial steps, it was entirely possible for one to fool the other party. The shadows of the lanterns on the window flickered, and the soft chatter of Gogurians could be heard from within. It was the conversation between two famous beauties. Wang Chong had learned Gogurian back then. The reason why he came here was because he heard a familiar phrase. "How's the investigation?" A cold voice in the room asked. It sounded authoritative. "I'm almost done. I've gathered all the information on White Tiger Peak." The other authoritative voice replied. A familiar sensation assaulted him once more, and the frown on Wang Chong's face deepened. This was the second time he had heard of this term. I'll hand it over to Lord once I've gathered all the information. Our loss the previous time was too bizarre. Lord must have his reasons for instructing us to do so. We'll know what's going on once we look into it. The authoritative voice replied. Wang Chong's mind buzzed, and countless thoughts flashed across his mind. He vaguely understood something. Your subordinate understands. The second authoritative voice replied. Also, pay attention to one thing. Lord has instructed us to stay low for the next few months. We mustn't cause any trouble. The Tang dynasty is loose on the outside, but tight on the inside. It's not as simple as it looks. The warriors we transferred over from the empire were used by the Tang dynasty to temper them. Not a single one of them escaped. The voice, which sounded like it had a high status, seemed to be a little repressed. It paused for a moment before continuing. However, these warriors died a worthy death. They have served the empire loyally. Also, Lord has instructed us to deal a heavy blow as long as we survive this wave. He has already contacted His Majesty, and a batch of elite warriors will be arriving from the Empire soon. When the time comes, we'll make the Tang dynasty suffer. Lord has his eyes on a batch of famous officials of the Tang dynasty. These people have never been friendly to our Goguryeo. When the time comes, we'll make them disappear from the face of the earth. We'll make the Tang dynasty suffer to the bone. Long live Goguryeo! Long live Saint Gaysaman! The authoritative voice seemed to have been injected with adrenaline, and it immediately grew agitated. Outside the window, Wang Chong's heart jolted. In that instant, a frenzied gale blew in his heart, raising huge waves. King Sojurim is moving ahead of schedule. This was the only thought that remained in Wang Chong's mind. King Sojurim's operation in the Central Plains wasn't limited to just this once. The assassinations and sabotage he organized would occur once every 3 to 5 years. King Sojurim had assassinated the important officials of the royal court before. But Wang Chong knew that none of them could compare to the one King Sojurim carried out half a year later. The censors of the royal court, the generals of the Bureau of Military Personnel, Bureau of Punishments, and some old officials of the Tang dynasty were all assassinated. Even the maids and servants in their residences were executed. This incident shocked the entire royal court, and even the Holy Emperor was infuriated. It was because of this incident that King Sojurim was hunted down by the entire royal court. Even the royal guards, chamberlains of Chamberlain, and the nobles of the royal court were involved. However, he was well prepared. After the assassination was over, he successfully backed out of the Tang dynasty and returned to Goguryeo safely. The entire incident of the Tang dynasty had made him famous. But this matter should have happened half a year later. Why would it be brought forward so suddenly? Wang Chong's heart was pounding furiously. But there was one thing that Wang Chong was certain of. The matter that the Goguryeo leaders were discussing was undoubtedly that matter. The Goguryeo martial arts syndicate already had considerable influence in the capital. For King Sojurim to mobilize a large number of elite soldiers from the capital, this was the only time in history that such a matter had happened within half a year. If not for the fact that he could understand Goguryeo, no one would have known of this matter. All right. You can leave now. The troops that Lord has requested will take another month or so to arrive. Make sure to pay attention to this period of time. The royal court of the Tang dynasty is currently investigating us. Make sure not to let them find anything. Ha ha ha, pardon me for being presumptuous, but Lord, you're overestimating them. It's not that I'm looking down on them. If they really had that kind of ability. Ha ha ha, that's true. In the room, the two Goguryons laughed heartily as they ended their conversation. Pang! Not too long after Wang Chong hid in the shadows, the doors suddenly opened, and a tall and muscular Goguryeo expert carrying a long black sword bag on his back walked out. Sweeping his gaze across the surroundings, he leaped onto the roof, and in a few leaps, he disappeared from the courtyard. After the expert left, the room fell silent. Under the light, the man sat motionless in front of the table, seemingly lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking about. Humph. How childish of me to fail to capture you. At the same time, Wang Chong sneered coldly as he slowly retreated along the path he came from. Gongzi, how is it? Upon seeing Wang Chong, Mayasame Ayaka heaved a long sigh of relief. She had been so nervous that she feared that Wang Chong would be discovered. She was prepared to make a move at any moment. But in her heart, Mayasame Ayaka was impressed. Wang Chong seemed to possess an endless amount of martial arts. It was hard to tell whether it was due to the deep heritage of the Tang dynasty, or if Wang Chong was the only one. You can leave now. Wang Chong said. He didn't intend to leave so quickly, but now, he had changed his mind. After leaving the Goguryeo gathering point, Wang Chong didn't return to the Wang family residence. Instead, he headed straight for the King of Song's residence. In the Great Tang Empire, Wang Chong was the only one who could knock on the door of a noble's residence in the middle of the night. Is what you said true? In the main hall, the King of Song wore a dark casual robe with a grim expression. He had been woken up from his sleep by Wang Chong. The only person who could do this without being blamed was Wang Chong. It's true. Wang Chong said as he recounted the events in detail. Of course, there were many things that Wang Chong had added in as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to win the trust of the King of Song. The King of Song didn't say a word, but his expression was exceptionally grim. There were precedents of Goguryons assassinating influential officials of the Tang dynasty. Even though there was no concrete evidence, all of the clues pointed to the Goguryons. Chapter 238. Regardless of which dynasty it was, the murder of an official was a huge matter. If the Goguryons were to really pull it off, it would be a huge blow to the prestige of the Tang dynasty and the royal court. More importantly, without evidence to prove that the Goguryons were the culprits, the royal court wouldn't be able to make a move against them. The Tang dynasty was a law-abiding nation, and everything was done according to the law. It was impossible for them to massacre the Goguryons in the west of the city just based on groundless evidence. Otherwise, it would cause a chain reaction, and the repercussions would be even greater. Wang Chong, this isn't a small matter. If an official is killed without any evidence, our reputation will be tarnished. We can't allow such a thing to happen. If you have their whereabouts, I can mobilize the city defense army and even request for the Imperial Forest and Imperial Forest to help you suppress the Goguryons. However, the prerequisite is that you have to confirm the time and location of their arrival. Otherwise, if we were to make a move recklessly, we might end up in a disadvantageous position. The King of Song said grimly. He immediately understood the severity of the matter, and he also understood why Wang Chong came to look for him. The Goguryons' movements actually included the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments, both of which were under his jurisdiction. If the officials of the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Punishments were to be killed, he would be the first to be apprehended by the Holy Emperor and punished accordingly. He couldn't afford to be careless in the face of such severe consequences. Just leave this matter to me. I have a way to track them down. But before that, I need your highness to help me with something. Wang Chong said. After which, he revealed the matter of the condor shooters in the Goguryon base. The strength of a condor shooter was no small matter. If one were to barge in without knowing their background, it would be impossible for them to return alive no matter how many people they had. A condor shooter could threaten dozens or even hundreds of experts of the same level, provided that the latter didn't have sufficient protective gear. Only a master archer could deal with a master archer. To deal with such a condor shooter, Wang Chong didn't have enough people around him. Only the King of Song's residence had such experts. I understand. The King of Song pondered for a moment before nodding. Leave this matter to me. Go to the side hall and wait. I will arrange for suitable people to help you. Thank you, Your Highness. After exiting the hall, Wang Chong met the expert arranged by the King of Song in the side hall. A burly man, who was more than 2 meters tall, stood in the hall. He wore a thick armor that looked like an iron bucket. Behind him was a 1.67-meter-long giant metal bow, which was extremely eye-catching. The bowstring used to draw the bow was as thick as a thumb. The thick armor covered his entire body. Other than a pair of cold eyes, nothing else could be seen. From this person, Wang Chong felt an extremely dangerous aura. Even though they were still 6 to 7 zhang away, Wang Chong felt his hair stand on end and his hair stand on end. He's an expert. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. Someone who could make his scalp go numb with just a glance was definitely an expert among experts. Greetings, young master. The King of Song has ordered me to be at your disposal. A buzzing voice came from under the fort-like armor. The voice was loud but emotionless, as if the person standing in front of Wang Chong was a machine that could not be cold. The nobles of the royal family do have some hidden experts in their residence. They are especially powerful. Wang Chong thought to himself. From his previous life, he knew that there were some especially powerful experts in the royal family who would not appear in front of people easily. The appearance of this sharpshooter was enough to prove this point. Wang Chong visited the King of Song very late at night. From the moment he requested for a sharpshooter expert to the formal acceptance, it only took a moment. The King of Song had already selected a suitable expert for him. How many arrows can you shoot in an instant? Asked Wang Chong, looking at the burly man who was a head taller than him. 104. Wang Chong sucked in a cold breath when he heard the crisp and decisive voice, without the slightest hesitation. This number was twice that of an ordinary sharpshooter. How far can each arrow shoot? Asked Wang Chong again. 17 miles away. Once again, it was a surprising answer. How far can one see in the dark, down to the finest detail? Wang Chong said. This time, it involved another concept in archery. The so-called down to the finest detail was to clearly see the lines on the wings of a mosquito or the veins on the back of a leaf. Only when one reached this level could one be said to be able to see the finest detail. This was one of the aspects of archery. It was much more demanding than observing an apple on a tree from several miles away. Because an apple alone was not considered a vein, it was naturally not considered as being able to see the finest detail. This time, the burly man at the corner of the hall hesitated for a moment and did not answer immediately. 267 zhang. The burly man said after a moment of silence. 267 zhang, that was 800 meters. To be able to see the fine lines on the wings of a mosquito from 800 meters away in the dark was already an astounding feat. With such eyesight paired with his astounding cultivation, he would be an invincible threat in the dark. Wang Chong was delighted. Follow me. Bringing the burly man with him, Wang Chong left the King of Song residence. There was still a month before King Sojurim would make his move, so there was more than enough time. On the other hand, with this master archer whom he begged from King Song, Mayase Mayaka, and the experts of the Zhuang and Qi clans, Wang Chong didn't panic. Instead, he began his cultivation plan. In the silent night, the Gogurians' gathering point was as peaceful as ever. So far, the Gogurians hadn't noticed anything at all. Swoosh! Around 1:45, a figure leaped over the walls of the residence. Beneath his clothes, 3 protruding swords stood out conspicuously. This was the most obvious symbol of a Gogurian warrior. The night wind blew, and the Gogurian warrior seemed extremely wary. As soon as he landed on the ground, he immediately scanned his surroundings, and after confirming that there was nothing amiss, he quickly walked away. After walking for a while, he soon left the vicinity of the gathering point. While he was walking, he suddenly saw a young man hurrying toward him. Taken aback, a hint of doubt flashed across his eyes. He felt that something was amiss, but he didn't think that he had exposed any flaws, so the other party shouldn't be coming for him. Thus, he continued on his way. It seemed like an insignificant encounter, but just as the two of them were about to brush past each other, an abrupt change occurred. Clang! The sound of a sword being unsheathed suddenly echoed in his ears. Indistinctly, killing intent surged, and a chilling aura enveloped the Gogurian expert like a tidal wave. Not good. The Gogurian expert's face warped in horror, and he subconsciously tried to draw his sword. However, his overconfidence and carelessness had harmed him. Chi! A sharp sword chi pierced through his chest, piercing right through his chest and exiting through his back. The blinding radiance of the sword chi even pierced through a large tree behind him. In just an instant, the Gogurian expert was severely injured. Bastard! Alarmed and furious, the Gogurian expert swiftly whipped out 2 black sabers, and at the same time, origin energy burst forth from his body. A ring of white ripples formed from origin energy rippled outward in all directions, reminiscent of the rumbling of metal. Wherever the white ripples passed, the surrounding air would tremble violently, and a sound reminiscent of a tsunami could be heard. Origin Energy Tier 9. At this level, one would be able to release one's inner chi externally, and the white ripples would appear with every movement of one's body. At this level, one would be able to execute the void-splitting palm, void-shattering palm, and even more formidable experts would be able to execute the legendary 100 Steps Divine Fist. Clearly, the Gogurian expert was an Origin Energy Tier 9 expert. How dare you assault me? You're courting death. The Gogurian's eyes were sharp. With a single glance, he could tell that the young man who assaulted him didn't possess a high cultivation. The other party had only managed to injure him by catching him off guard. Wang! However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Wang! In an instant, the white ripples that the Gogurian expert had released suddenly vanished, as though the source of life had been sucked dry. This abrupt change disrupted the Gogurian expert's rhythm. Not only was his body affected, even his origin energy was thrown out of balance. It was as though a pair of invisible shackles had locked down his origin energy, causing his cultivation to plummet from origin energy tier 9 to origin energy tier 8. Qi. In that instant, a blazing sword Qi harnessed an aura of destruction and slaughter pierced through his left chest. The two-sword Qi had sent him into a state of near death. Puqi. Following which, a bizarrely shaped crimson sword slid through his flesh and pierced into the Gogurian expert's heart. The battle only lasted for a few breaths before it ended. What in the world is going on? Astonished, the Gogurian expert fell to his knees. Even at the moment of his death, he had no idea what had happened to his body. Why did the white ripples that he had released suddenly vanish? Why did he suddenly lose control of a portion of his origin energy even though he still had it in his body? How comfortable. So this is the little yin-yang art. Standing before the corpse of the Gogurian expert, Wang Chong drove the little yin-yang art in his body, and waves of origin energy flowed into his body through the crimson little yin-yang sword. The exhilaration from the growth of origin energy was indescribable. The 84,000 pores on his body felt as though they had opened up, and the origin energy in his body was growing swiftly as well. This was the first time Wang Chong was using the little yin-yang sword given to him by his master, the evil emperor, to absorb another person's origin energy. The feeling was indescribable. It's no wonder why the great yin-yang heaven creation art is labeled as an evil art. This feeling of easily obtaining origin energy is simply too addictive. And once a person is addicted to it, it's easy for them to harbor thoughts of endless slaughter. Thus, those who cultivate this art will become numb to killing, becoming more and more frenzied. In that instant, Wang Chong's mind was clear, and the origin energy in his body grew rapidly. In just a short period of time, it had already surpassed Wang Chong's several months of hard work, leaving Wang Chong in awe. Chapter 239. At the same time, a voice sounded in Wang Chong's mind. Along with this voice, a raging wind blew, and invisible origin energy seeped into Wang Chong's body through his limbs and bones. In that instant, Wang Chong could clearly sense that his aura had grown slightly stronger, and the bane of the battlefield halo within him had grown significantly stronger as well. Just a single origin energy tier 9 Gogurian warrior had raised Wang Chong's origin energy and halo simultaneously. There was no other way to raise his cultivation faster than this. Using the little yin-yang art to absorb the opponent's origin energy and internal energy, using the sword Qi of massacre to subdue the opponent, and through killing the opponent, he would absorb the opponent's internal energy to strengthen the little yin-yang art. Repeating this cycle, Wang Chong's cultivation plan in his previous life was slowly being carried out by his own hands. To think that I thought that the little yin-yang art could only absorb a small portion of the opponent's origin energy when they were severely injured, and that it was a huge flaw. From the looks of it now, this ability is already formidable. Seeing is believing. No matter how much I hear or understand, I can't compare to trying it out with my own eyes. Executing the little yin-yang art was completely different from what he imagined it to be. It wasn't an easy task to absorb all of an opponent's internal energy. At the very least, one had to reach an extremely high level of mastery in order to do so. In comparison, the little yin-yang art's ability to absorb a portion of the opponent's origin energy when they were severely injured and unable to put up any resistance was already incredible. Gongzi, you're even more like an assassin than us. A familiar voice suddenly sounded from behind. On a nearby tree, Mayase Mayaka, dressed in a nocturnal outfit, slid down from the lush crown of the tree. Her movements were as light as a leopard as she slowly made her way toward Wang Chong. She had been watching from the top of the tree, prepared to make a move the moment the situation turned for the worse. She didn't expect Wang Chang's attack to be so swift and decisive, dealing with the opponent in just a few moves. She didn't even have a chance to make a move. Hee, even if you haven't eaten pork, haven't you seen a pig run? Wang Chong chuckled. Young master. Taken aback, Mayasame Ayaka couldn't help but blush. Wang Chong was clearly referring to her. Ha ha ha, Wang Chong laughed heartily. He used a few lines from his previous life to tease Mayasame Ayaka. Let's go and deal with the corpses. Don't let the Gogurians find out. As Wang Chong spoke, he bent down and searched the body of the Origin Energy Tier 9 Gogurian. Soon, Wang Chong discovered something. It was a wooden box about 2 fingers wide, and it exuded a faint fragrance. The Gogurian seemed to have placed great importance on it. Wang Chong opened the wooden box, and soon, a golden Gogurian ginseng appeared before his eyes. It's really here. Looking at the ginseng in the wooden box, Wang Chong smiled as if he had expected it. The reason why he ambushed the Gogurian expert wasn't just to cultivate the little yin-yang art and bane of the battlefield. His other objective was the Gogurian ginseng. The Gogurian ginseng was renowned throughout the world, and according to the age of the ginseng, it could be categorized into white and gold. Judging from the color, this ginseng was at least 200 to 300 years old. The Zhuang clan and Qi clan had to put in a lot of effort just to take out a 200 to 300 years old ginseng, and yet, every single one of these Gogurian warriors had one on them. Even though Gogurian's territory isn't large, it has quite a few experts. These Gogurian ginseng sure have contributed a lot. Looking at the ginseng in his hand, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh. Just by picking an Origin Energy Tier 9 Gogurian warrior, he was able to find a 200 to 300 years old ginseng on him. From this, it was clear how wealthy Gogurian was. With these deep-fire ginseng, the Gogurian Empire could easily mass-produce experts. Just like harvesting chives, he plucked them wave after wave. Placing the ginseng back into the wooden box, Wang Chong stuffed it into his robe, turned around, and left. Not too long after he left, the battlefield was cleaned up. The corpses and bloodstains were all wiped clean. Even the traces of battle were wiped clean. In the following period of time, Wang Chong spent his days ambushing the Gogurians who were traveling between the stronghold and the other areas of the capital. Wang Chong had long realized that this stronghold was in close contact with the Gogurians in the west of the capital. Every day, there would be a different group of people coming and going. As long as he chose a suitable time to ambush them along the way, he would be able to accomplish it without anyone noticing. Of course, the Gogurians didn't lack experts either, and those true martial realm experts were more than enough to crush Wang Chong easily. Thus, Wang Chong chose his opponents carefully, choosing only Origin Energy Tier 9 experts. As for the others, he didn't touch a single true martial realm expert. At the very least, he wouldn't touch them at his current cultivation realm. 1, 2, 3, Wang Chong ambushed the Gogurian warriors one after another, strengthening his bane of the battlefield halo and the origin energy in his body. At the same time, the ginseng collected from the Gogurian warriors was also consumed by Wang Chong, nourishing the origin energy in Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong could feel his strength growing stronger and stronger, and he was getting closer and closer to Origin Energy Tier 8. Days passed, but Wang Chong wasn't in a hurry. He made use of this rare opportunity to strengthen himself. The amount of Origin Energy required to advance from Origin Energy Tier 7 to Origin Energy Tier 8 was far greater than any of the previous tiers. The higher one's realm, the more origin energy one would require. In fact, the amount of origin energy required could even be multiplied. Ha! Amidst the darkness, a loud bellow sounded. In an instant, 3 black sabers charged out from the forest like a massive spinning top, slicing toward Wang Chong. So, without any hesitation, Wang Chong executed the single consecutive slash and somersaulted in midair, dodging the lightning strike by a hair's breadth. Chi! Two dazzling sword chi, each as thick as a finger, filled with killing intent and destruction, shot out from between Wang Chang's fingers as he somersaulted. These two sword chi were incomparably sharp. The first pierced through the flood of stellar energy and pierced through the Goguryeo warrior's left chest, while the second pierced through his right chest. Two consecutive surges of sword chi struck down the Goguryeo cultivator. What kind of sword chi is this? Amidst the forest, the Goguryeo warrior bellowed in disbelief. The flood of stellar energy of an Origin Energy Tier 9 cultivator was powerful enough to shatter boulders and deflect even the attacks of swords and sabers. Yet, it was unable to dodge those two inconspicuous sword chi. But before he could even react, Puchi Wang Chong leaped up from the tree branch and flew back. The little yin-yang sword pierced into the Goguryeo warrior's body. Congratulations to user for killing 20 Goguryeo warriors. A voice filled with anticipation sounded by Wang Chong's ear. Hong long, the surrounding air vibrated, and an indiscernible surge of origin energy gathered from the surroundings. Wang Chong wasn't unfamiliar with the bane of the battlefield aura, but there was something different this time around. Wang Chong could clearly sense that the rate and duration of the origin energy surging into his body had increased significantly, and it was completely different from before. Not only so, along with the influx of origin energy, Wang Chong felt the bane of the battlefield aura in his body jolting, and the aura it emanated also changed slightly. It became denser and heavier. As expected, when the number of enemy soldiers I kill reaches an integer of 10, 20, or 30, the energy I absorb from the surroundings will undergo a qualitative change. Regardless of whether it's the intensity of the origin energy absorbed or the duration of the absorption, it will increase significantly. Surges of origin energy gushed into Wang Chong's body from the Goguryeo warrior's body, and while feeling the increase in origin energy, Wang Chong slowly closed his eyes and nodded in realization. Back then, during the night assault, Wang Chong had noticed that there would be a change in the absorption of origin energy when the number of enemies he killed reached an integer. However, he wasn't able to verify it back then. Now that he had verified it, it was indeed the case. Gongzi, the Goguryans are getting more and more wary. Behind him, Mayasame Ayaka walked out from the forest. Glancing at Wang Chong's back, a hint of admiration flashed across her eyes. Wang Chong had already simplified his assassination methods, turning them into a model that would allow him to become more efficient. His battle with the Goguryans had never lasted too long before Wang Chong started. Most of the time, the battle would end in just a few rounds. Of course, this was also due to the fact that such an ambush wasn't suitable for a prolonged battle. Otherwise, if the Goguryans in the base were to be alarmed, Wang Chong's identity would be exposed. Those fellows are indeed getting more and more wary. They must have noticed something. Wang Chong raised his head and remarked. He should have been the one to make the first move, but the Goguryeo was the one who made the first move. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. If not for the massive increase in his fighting prowess over the past dozen days, he wouldn't have been able to match up to his initial strength. It would have been impossible for the battle to end so quickly. Gongyu, aren't you curious as to why I never allow you to interfere? Wang Chong suddenly turned around and glanced at Mayasame Ayaka. Gongyu wouldn't dare. Wang Chong replied with a smile that didn't seem like a smile, but Mayasame Ayaka's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly lowered her head. She wasn't a fool. In just half a month, Wang Chong's cultivation was already higher than what others would achieve in a year. The powerful sword chi at his fingertips and the inexplicable weakening of his opponents all pointed to the fact that there was something invisible at play in the battle. Gong Yu's cultivation was even higher than Wang Chong's, so she could sense that the aura of this young master of the Tang dynasty would rise significantly every time he killed an opponent. It would be a miracle if she said that there was nothing amiss here. Chapter 240. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Wang Chong chuckled. Mayasame Ayaka was much smarter than he had thought. I guess there's no need for me to say anything then. Wang Chong thought. It was impossible for the Gogurians to not notice the disappearance of so many of their men. Wang Chong knew that it would be more and more difficult to ambush them. Gongzi, what should we do next? Kneeling on the floor, Mayasame Ayaka asked with a lowered head. Since this place is already guarded, let's change our location. Mayasame, have you memorized the faces of those Gogurians? Wang Chong said. Yes. Every single one of the Gogurian soldiers that we have discovered has been tailed. Mayasame Ayaka replied respectfully. Even though they had been targeting this Gogurian base, Wang Chong and the others had their own plans as well. All of the Gogurian soldiers that Wang Chong had identified had been tailed. Every single one of them had been recorded down in detail. Even though they had only discovered this Gogurian base initially, they had discovered more and more as time went by. As the saying goes, a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. In a place like the capital, the Gogurians had far more than just this one. Are we going to head to another place now? Mayasame Ayaka raised her head and asked. There's no rush. Wang Chong chuckled and waved his hands. Since he had already killed so many Gogurians, he decided to rest for the time being. There was another matter that he had to attend to. Chonga, you're here. In Big Uncle Wang Zhen's residence, deep into the night, Wang Zhen, dressed in a loose robe with a hairpin on his head, was seated in the main hall with a benevolent look on his face. In front of him was a porcelain plate, and on the plate were 2 cups of fragrant tea. The cups were still warm, and the fragrance of the tea wafted into the air. On top of that, there were 5 exquisite desserts placed on the sandalwood table. From the looks of it, Wang Zhen seemed to have known that Wang Chong would be coming. Big Uncle. Wang Chong faintly smiled and respectfully bowed. It had been more than a month since they last met, and Big Uncle's complexion was rosy. His complexion was extraordinary, and he seemed to be in good health. Even the invisible aura he exuded had increased significantly. Congratulations, Big Uncle. Looks like you're going to be promoted again. Wang Chong grinned. Brat, what nonsense are you spouting? At our level, taking a step forward is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. How could it be that easy? Big Uncle Wang Zhen scolded jokingly. His actions had become much more amiable. In the past, he would never have dared to joke around with Wang Chong, but now, he found this nephew of his more and more pleasing to the eye. It was impossible for Wang Chong to say that he would be promoted. However, his authority in the imperial court was indeed growing stronger and stronger. This was inseparable from Wang Chong. The regional commander's incident that Wang Chong had stirred up had come to an end. Even though there had been some twists and turns along the way, in the end, the Wang clan's prestige had risen once more, and its influence had grown significantly as well. The Wang clan and Song clan had been on good terms for 3 generations, and with the reinstatement of the King of Song, the Wang clan had benefited as well. It was only natural that Wang Zhen's standing in the imperial court would rise. You're here for the matter regarding Yang Zhao, right? Wang Zhen asked. Wang Chong chuckled. Big Uncle, what's the current situation in the imperial court? What else can it be? Zhangqiu Jianqiong is currently a ferocious dragon crossing the river. Who wouldn't be suspicious of the sudden intrusion of a border official? It has never been an easy feat to get to the imperial court from this place. It would be a wonder if he could get in so easily. Wang Zhen took a sip of tea and tapped the table beside him with a finger. Wang Chong nodded and sat down beside Big Uncle Wang Zhen with a smile. Chonga, let me ask you one more time. Are you sure that Zhangqiu Jianqiong will be able to enter the imperial court? Wang Zhen put down his teacup and asked grimly. This matter was of great importance, so he had to get to the bottom of it. Of course, it's because that person wants him to go up. Wang Chong pointed to the sky and smiled. Wang Zhen frowned. He was an intelligent person, so he immediately understood what was going on. By pointing to the sky, it went without saying that Wang Chong was referring to the Holy Emperor. Given the Holy Emperor's standing, he shouldn't have anything to do with Zhangqiu Jianqiong. After all, even though Zhangqiu Jianqiong had presided over Jiannan for several decades, he hadn't contributed much to the empire. At the very most, he had only managed to ensure the peace of the region. Given his achievements, it was impossible for him to enter the Bureau of Military Personnel. Since this wasn't the intention of the Holy Emperor, there was only one person left. Consort Tai Zhen. This thought flashed across Wang Zhen's mind. Consort Tai Zhen and Yang Zhao were cousins, and Yang Zhao was on good terms with Zhangqiu Jianqiong. It wasn't hard to imagine the relationship between the two. The Holy Emperor had never been interested in women. But for some reason, he was extremely fond of this consort Tai Zhen. In fact, he even made an exception to stand against the entire royal court for her, and even the king of Song was demoted. If consort Tai Zhen wanted Zhangqiu Jianqiong to enter the capital, it would be the will of the Holy Emperor. No matter how inexperienced Zhangqiu Jianqiong was, no matter how many people were against him, he would still be able to enter the capital. Chong'er, looking at the young Wang Chong before him, a complicated gleam flashed across Wang Zhen's eyes. Wang Chong might be young, but for some reason, he possessed talent in the royal court that left even his uncle in awe. If it was in the past, Wang Zhen might have felt a little jealous. But now, it was truly a blessing for the Wang clan to have such a Qilin son. I know what I should do now. Wang Zhen nodded. I'll make a move tomorrow and officially support Zhangqiu Jianqiong. Those bastards in the royal court sure are cunning. They are probably waiting for someone else to step in. Wang Chong snickered inside. Others might be like that, but Big Uncle was the same as well. Right, Big Uncle, where did Cousin Yan go? Wang Chong said. Why? You don't know. Wang Zhen frowned in bewilderment. Zhu Yan went to Shinwei training camp. Didn't she tell you about this? Wang Chong shook his head. Initially, he thought that this second sister of his would come to Kunwu. Little did he expect that she would go to the even more impressive Shinwei training camp. She really didn't care about him, her little brother, at all. But thinking about it, this was indeed something she would do. After leaving Big Uncle's residence, Wang Chong headed straight for the Falling Jade Pavilion. It had been 2 months since he last visited the Alchemist's Secret Alliance. Adding it all up, he could already afford 6 pills. To Wang Chong, these powerful pills of the royal court were the best tools for him to raise his cultivation. After paying a hefty fee, Wang Chong successfully obtained what he wanted from Liu Zhizhang. 4 elixirs that could increase one's cultivation, and 2 healing elixirs. After receiving these pills, Wang Chong didn't return to the Wang clan. Instead, he swallowed them on the spot. Boom! After swallowing 4 pills consecutively, Wang Chong's aura surged, and in a short period of time, he was already infinitely close to reaching Origin Energy Tier 8. Boom! A deafening explosion sounded, and the bones in Wang Chong's body creaked. The tide-like Yuan Qi was vast and mighty, rushing through all of his bones and muscles. For a moment, Wang Chong felt like the thunder in the distance had grown much louder. His eyes lit up. The darkness before him seemed to have lightened. Congratulations Gongzi, you've finally reached Origin Energy Tier 8. In the Falling Jade Pavilion, Mayasame Ayaka knelt on the floor respectfully. She immediately sensed the changes in Wang Chong's body, and she understood Wang Chong's plan. The reason why Wang Chong stopped his plan was because he wanted to use the pills here to reach Origin Energy Tier 8. With a cultivation of Origin Energy Tier 8, it would be much easier for him to carry out the assassination later on. Hee, that's right. I've finally reached it. Feeling the raging energy in his body, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel delighted. Upon reaching Origin Energy Tier 8, one's eye of discernment and strength would be enhanced significantly. More importantly, once he reached Origin Energy Tier 8, he would be able to cultivate a Speed-type secret art on top of Agility-type cultivation techniques. Strength, speed, and dexterity, to a true martial artist, none of these were lacking. With just the Spectre's steps, Mayasame Ayaka was able to become a top-notch assassin. On the other hand, Wang Chong would only grow stronger. Sharpening the axe won't delay the work of chopping wood. Raising his speed, strength, and dexterity would make dealing with the Gogurians much easier. Wang. In the remaining time, Wang Chong continued to work hard and raised his might of the barbaric god to 8 Dan. At this point, Wang Chong's strength and explosiveness had already reached the level of an Origin Energy Tier 9 primary stage expert. Even without using the sword Chi of Massacre, he was still able to match up to an expert of this level. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Wang Chong pondered for a moment before deciding on a speed-type cultivation technique for himself. Phantom Steps. This secret art was similar to Mayasame Ayaka's Spectre Steps in that it was soundless and incomparably fast. However, unlike Mayasame Ayaka's, Phantom Steps didn't have a huge flaw like Spectre Steps, and it wouldn't result in severe injuries or death. In Wang Chong's memories, this was an extremely mature movement technique. Wang. Surges of origin energy surged within Wang Chong's body. Unlike any other cultivation technique he had cultivated before, the origin energy in Wang Chong's body circulated once around his body before rushing toward the acupoints and meridians in his legs like a raging river. It was impossible for a person to walk with their hands, so regardless of whether it was Spectre Steps or Phantom Steps, the most crucial acupoints and meridians were located in the legs. This was the first time Wang Chong was cultivating a speed-type secret art, and the process wasn't easy. However, using the undigested medicinal energy from the 4 pills he had just consumed, Wang Chong successfully cleared a large portion of the meridians and acupoints in his legs. Peng peng peng. Innumerable profound entrances and acupoints burst open, 2 days later. So. With a flash of light, a silhouette flitted across the room and through the door, disappearing from the room. Before Mayasame Ayaka could react, she saw a familiar silhouette not too far away. Gogongzi. Seeing Wang Chong suddenly appear under the moonlight, Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. Her eyes were wide open as she stared in disbelief at the nearby Wang Chong. She was a natural-born assassin, and her perception was even sharper than Wang Chong's. But just a moment ago, she didn't even notice how Wang Chong had disappeared from the room and passed by her. In fact, even at such a close distance, she couldn't sense Wang Chong's aura at all. Even if she were to see him with her eyes, she would find his silhouette blurry, unable to see him clearly. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Mayasame Ayaka was astonished. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.